Good evening and welcome. This is the April 19th, 2023 public hearing of the Land Use Commission. The City Code directs this body to hear applications for map and text amendments, special uses including planned developments, zoning relief, and appeals from decisions of the zoning administrator, as well as to make recommendations regarding the city's long-term planning goals and objectives. Depending on the type of matter, this commission will either make a final determination or send its recommendation to City Council. Would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Aravallo.
Here.
Commissioner Halleck. Commissioner Hugo is absent. Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner Lindwall is absent. Commissioner Miranchev.
Here.
Commissioner Pucktell.
Here.
Commissioner Westerberg.
Here.
And Chair Rogers.
Here, so with 7 members present, we do have a quorum. Also present tonight from city staff are Planner Katie Ashbaugh, Neighborhood and Land Use Planner Megan Jones, Assistant City, or I'm sorry, you've got a promotion. You're a Deputy City Attorney now? Deputy City Attorney Alex Ruggie, Planning Manager Liz Williams, and Community Development Director Sarah Flax. This is a formal hearing. There are rules that govern our proceedings. Most importantly, only one person speaks at a time so that all testimony may be accurately recorded. Anyone who wishes to address the commission on any matter on tonight's agenda will be able to do so at the appropriate time. Our procedure is to hear from staff on the documents on file and then receive testimony and other evidence from the applicant or appellant. After that, persons wishing to make a statement regarding the matter will have a chance to do so. Any person with a legal interest in property located within the defined notification requirements of the subject property may present evidence, reasonably question witnesses, or seek a continuance of the hearing. When all supporting and opposing testimony and statements have been heard, the applicant or appellant will be given the opportunity for rebuttal or a closing statement. Then the commission will close the record and begin deliberations to consider the standards. The commission will make formal findings of fact based on the testimony and evidence presented, guided by the standards, the commissioner's knowledge of the community, and the recommendations of staff. All testimony is taken under oath. Although we do not apply the strict rules of evidence, please limit your testimony as it relates to the standards contained in the zoning ordinance and the corresponding staff memorandum. When testifying, please state your name and address for the record and sign in on the public comment sheet. Our meetings are audio and video recorded. Please make sure that you are at a microphone when asking questions or making statements so that you may be properly recorded. All proceedings are subject to broadcast at a later date. Any matter not concluded at tonight's hearing will be continued to our next regularly scheduled meeting. We just have one item on the agenda this evening, which is major variations for 2000 Simpson Street. Is the applicant present? I see them in the room. At this point, I'm going to ask anybody who feels they may be speaking to us on this matter to be sworn. If you'd raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth throughout the course of these proceedings? Thank you very much. Before we move on to that matter, though, we don't have any minutes, do we?
No, we do not.
Okay, so we'll get those at our next meeting. So then we'll move right into the new business, and I'll ask the applicant for 2000 Simpson Street to please come up to the lectern.
Commissioners, thank you for your time this evening. My name is Sergio Hernandez Jr. I am currently serve as the president of the District 65 School Board. On behalf of our school board and district leadership team, we are pleased to be here tonight as part of a historic process to return a public school to Evanston's 5th Ward community. The building of a new school in the 5th Ward to serve kindergarten through 8th grade students is part of the district's comprehensive vision for the future of public schools in Evanston-Skokie. Our plan is rooted in community voice, is focused on equitable outcomes for all students, neighborhood schools, and high-quality educational programming to prepare all students for success in high school and beyond. I would like to introduce our team here this evening.
Mr. Hernandez, I'm going to interrupt you for just a second because I forgot to have it read into the record. I'm sorry, I got thrown off by not having minutes. So I'm going to just ask you to pause for a second and going to ask Megan is going to read it into the record, if you would, please. I'm sorry.
Not a problem.
Alex Lopez of Cordigan Clark Architects, applicant and architect for the property owner, submits for the following major variations in order to construct a three-story K through 8 educational institution public. Floor area ratio, or FAR, of .62, where the maximum is .15, section 61596. A proposed height of 3 stories at 55 feet, where 2.5 stories at 35 feet is maximum, section 61597. Open parking location within the front yard, section 61621C. Loading area located in the required front yard, section 61641B. And loading area dimension at 10 by 35 that is located within the drive aisle width of the parking lot, section 61644. The Land Use Commission makes a recommendation to the City Council, the determining body for this case, in accordance with zoning code section 63810 and ordinance 92021. And this is PIN 1013-201-028.
Sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Hernandez. You can go ahead with the introduction of your team, please.
Not a problem. So I would like to introduce our team here this evening. We have Rafael Obafemi, District 65 Chief Financial Officer, Sarita Smith, Director of Student Assignments, Melissa Messenger, Executive Director of Communications, Brian Crowley, our Board Counsel, Mike Marus with Marus and Company, who prepared the market impact analysis, and Brian Kronwitter and Alex Lopez, who represent our architectural and construction management firm of Corrigan Clark, who will lead our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you so much for spending your time and volunteering your time here. I'm also a zoning commissioner in the town that I live in, so it's refreshing to be on the other side of things here. So I know exactly where you're at right now. I prepared a really short presentation. I want to give you guys an overview of what I'm sure you've reviewed in your board packets already. So without further ado, we are very excited to be able to have the opportunity to present the Fifth Ward and Bessie Road School here to you all. One of the things that has been extremely important to us is obviously the cooperation, and I can't thank city staff enough. They've been leading the way here for the last several months with us, as well as district staff and the community. And so one of the things that we looked at from the very beginning is safety of the children, and specifically those that are going to be walking in the Fifth Ward. So one of the main things that we want to look at here real quickly is as you can see the Fifth Ward, and here we have essentially a school walk route plan. And this is important to us for several reasons. Obviously, safety, number one. But we really are looking at not just the Foster Park area, but all of the immediate blocks surrounding it. So we do have some walking routes. We do have some crossing guards planned in place, and definitely traffic signals, whether they're active and passive. As you know, historically, the Fifth Ward heart has been Foster Park, and we've taken really an overall approach that is community-centered and definitely having the students be the center of the entire operation and design of the space. Very cognizant of District 65 property, City of Evanston property, and including Family Focuses property. One of the things that we have looked at extensively is how do we fit in a 21st century educational building that will meet essentially the Fifth Ward community's needs for a brand new school. Some of the things that we looked at obviously is improving the overall quality of the space. We realized that there's going to be a building there that wasn't there before. One of the things we looked at is, and central to everything that you see on the screen here, is the green space. Everything revolved around the green space. One of the main reasons why we chose the playfield where it's at, 5 community engagement meetings, surveys, plenty of chance meetings with community members, and really listening to what the community, what is important to the community. So having the playfield in the center of the campus is what we're calling it, provides protection for the children as they are going out in recess. We have reached an agreement with Family Focus and are going to introduce age-appropriate playground equipment. Some of it is going to be separated by age, obviously. We're going to introduce a new basketball area. And at the end of the day, we are going to provide an additional 83 parking spaces that are not available currently. Fleetwood Jourdain, I believe, has about 24 spaces, and we have reached an agreement with them to be able to share the parking lot, the play fields, and the playground and the basketball court for their programming after school or before school on the weekends and definitely on the summer. There's 5 electric vehicle stations. One of them is accessible, and there's plenty of accessible parking here. Here's a rendering, an overview rendering of the corner of Ashland and Simpson. One of the things that was extremely important to us is neighborhood context. Through the process of the last 6 to 8 months, and speaking with community and District 65 staff, we had arrived at a program that was going to necessitate 4 stories at the beginning of the process. Through the process and listening to the community, we were able to make the building a little bit smaller and erase a full story off the building. I've heard the official height is 55 feet, and the main reason for that is that center atrium is really the tallest portion of the building. The rest of the building, the average is a 15-foot floor-to-floor height, so about 45 feet. The next thing that we're going to look like, this is what we're most excited about as architects and designers, is what this area is going to look like. It's going to be an improvement as our babies walk into school, being funneled through this not park-like setting, but really truly a park. One of the things that you can see here clearly, to make things a little bit clearer, there's a beautiful canopy of trees in between the Fleetwood Jourdain Center and the Family Focus building. We have designed that area in between them to keep the existing green canopy. That is very beautiful and is important to us. And having that safe space where the buildings are surrounding the park to protect the children was very important. Here you see conceptual elevation of what the building may look like right off of Simpson Street. This is the taller portion that I was mentioning to you before. The atrium is the 55-foot height. The materials are mainly brick, mostly brick, 2 different colors, a little bit of metal panel at this point. We really wanted to introduce, this is a view on Ashland Street where it's a little bit closer to some residences, and we wanted to break down the building scale and remove a little bit more curtain wall and add more punched openings, so it is a little bit more contextual, and it brings down the scale. As you can see on the upper story, we set it back a little bit. This particular view is the view that gets me more excited. Again, is off to sneaking on the left. There is Dewey Avenue, and if you're familiar with the site, that's the existing cul-de-sac. But this is the view that's going to be greeting our children as they move through the site into their new school. There's essentially two entries. This is probably going to be on the south end, the one that's going to be mostly used by the children as they walk to school. Again, this is a little bit closer to Dewey Avenue, and again, pushing the building back a bit, reducing the amount of curtain wall. Again, all of this to be able to, all this is to break down the scale of the building and be respectful of the surrounding homes across the street. We're really excited about this view because the school district and quite frankly us, we see this as a true campus. The school is going to be open during the day, obviously, and alive from 7:30 to 3:30 in the afternoon, but this is really going to be a beacon for the community. It's a community building, it's going to be a community park, and it's important to note that this whole area is going to be alive, even more and more vibrant than it already is today. The plants are about 35% cooked. We have a lot of work to do, but initially, I wanted to give you an overview of what we're thinking. On the north side, you can see the classroom wing. We're still trying to figure out the exact number of classrooms there. It's going to land between 39 and 42, somewhere there, okay? There's an administration area right near the front door. Let me point to it, actually. Administration area here, classroom wing here, and then really the large spaces here. So we have a stage and a band room that's adjacent to the cafeteria, and the cafeteria is obviously adjacent to the serving line and the kitchen. That is the first floor. The second floor, the classroom wing, here pretty much stays intact. There are some more open areas as the grades, basically, the older kids start moving up. The young guys, the little guys are going to be on the first floor. Here we're introducing what could be the library or a media center in this corner, and then we have a gymnasium and locker rooms just south of that. These three white spaces essentially indicate that it's open to below, so that there is the atrium and the cafeteria and stage are two-story spaces, and so you'll be able to look down into those spaces, creating a nice bridge with a breakout area that's going to be pretty exciting once it gets fully designed. Again, there's a lot of work that needs to be done prior to cementing these floor plans. We're right in the middle of meetings with the staff. We're going to bring some of the past students and new upcoming students here so they can give us their opinion as to what the interior of their new building is going to look like. So, again, we're still doing a lot of work here. This third floor, you can start to see that the height on the south end is pulled back. That is no longer part of the equation here by lowering the height of the building. We do have a classroom wing there and potential different student services there. The two boxes here are probably most likely going to end up a couple of science labs with a prep room there. That's all I have right now. It's a quick overview because I understand you do have a large packet that you read. So at this point, if you have any questions.
Commissioner Halleck.
Just to back up a little bit, I understand from what we've read in our packet, there's some residents that, nearby residents that are objecting to this project on this site. So my question is, and I also read that you looked at other alternative sites, and the result, I guess, was that there were too many variances. But I think variances are one thing and neighborhood objections are another. And so could you talk a little bit about how you arrived at this property?
Absolutely. So feel free to jump in here if you want. But essentially, this is the largest land that is available that the school district already owns. Okay, so that was the main start here. We're obviously in an urban environment. And so, as you can see, it's dense anywhere you look around this area. It's a beautiful town, and so that is the main reason why the school is sited here. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, pretty much, unless there's anything else that you want to add. With ownership, land.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Westerberg. I'm struggling
Well,
tonight.
soon we forget. Just to clarify, so the district owns most of that land. Does the city own the land for Fleetwood Jourdain, or does it just own the building on the land leased from District 65?
It's a great question. So this, I know it's a little bit hard to see on the screen here, but the District 65 property is this kind of weird L shape,
Okay,
okay? City of Evanston, which includes the, most of the land that the city of Evanston owns is actually, the building, Fleetwood Jourdain Center. And then, Family Focus owns, obviously their building, their property, but they also own, the current, park that's between both of those buildings.
okay, all right. So a couple questions just from a site planning standpoint. Did you explore at all the possibility of doing any parking below grade, just so you could get a little more efficient use of the site and perhaps relieve the streets from some of that traffic?
We most definitely did. It's probably been, from our end and District 65, it's probably been 6 to 8 months that idea initially came up. There are several factors why we moved away from it. The number one factor is extremely expensive. The site, your site has a very high groundwater table. And so in order to build underground, we essentially would have to design a bathtub, if you excuse my term, and that's extremely expensive. If you move forward a few months, as recent as maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago, we had actually, by the request of city staff, we explored the possibility of moving further and figuring out how much it would actually cost, and there was a consultant that was hired. And I believe, I'm doing this off of memory, so excuse me if I get this wrong, but it was $7 to $10 million to add an underground parking structure, and that only it actually gave less parking spaces that we're suggesting right now. So it is extremely expensive for those reasons.
And if you could clarify also, this is really 2 schools that are represented for the entire building, correct?
That's correct. So the building is going to house kindergarten through 8th graders. However, it's also going to house Bessie Rhodes Magnet School. And there's one section of each grade that is going to be moved over to this building.
Okay. So understanding that the size of the building sort of is where it is, because you do have 2 schools, I'm sure there's been some discussion of whether you needed both in this location, or whether you just needed the 5th Ward School. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
I'm going to let the school district answer that question.
Raphael Obafemi, I'm the Chief Financial Officer for the school district. And to answer your question, the decision was made to include Bessie Rhodes in the new 5th Ward School because the majority of the kids who are actually at Bessie Rhodes right now, they reside in the 5th Ward. So the district actually transport them from the 5th Ward to Bessie Rhodes. So that was the reason why we made the decision to include them as a school within a school in the new school that is planned in the 5th Ward.
Related to that, what was the program that, I'm sorry. What was the program that was deleted when you reduced the height of the building? Which school, and how did that work?
So as I previously mentioned, the planning and the number of students is what's driving the size of the building, okay? So based on the school's current redistricting, we came to between 800 and 900 kids, okay? And so not to get too much into the weeds, but there's essentially a formula that we figure so many square feet per student for a 21st century building. And so it's the number of students that drive, to some degree, the size of the building. So as a quick example, it's not apples to apples and it's not one to one, because one of the things that we look at as school designers is what is the school going to, or how will it look like in 10 years, in 15 years, in 20 years? In the state of Illinois, as you know, it's cash strapped for education. And so one of the things that we look at as we design a building is the main spaces and their ability to handle a little bit of growth, okay? It's really easy to add classrooms to buildings, but what happens is your cafeterias, your gymnasiums, your libraries, these big spaces get diluted the more kids you put in there. And so what happens is instead of having 3 or 4 lunch periods, which is what the school would be designed for, you add more kids, you add more lunch periods. And so what ends up happening is some kids could start eating lunch at 10:30 in the morning, and then some kids eat lunch at 1:30 in the afternoon. So we try to avoid that for obvious reasons. By the time you're at 1:30, 2 o'clock, and you ate at 10:30, you have some issues. Number of gym classes in a gymnasium start growing. And so it's the overutilization of these large spaces that also drives how big a school is.
I guess the question is this being planned for the future, or was the building shortened just because the neighbors wanted it, and now you haven't planned for the future?
That's a really good question. I think at this point, due to all of the math, all of the people that figured out they're much smarter than I am, figured out the trending. There's a 10-year, 5-year, and of student growth. And so there is a sweet spot where we figured, again, the school's sized accordingly. I don't know if it's going to be 900 kids right off the bat. It may be, but it's going to accept a little growth. So having the 5 community meetings, community engagement meetings, listening to the survey that we put out with in tandem with the City of Evanston, we realized that at this point, the growth and listening to the community, we could scale the building back with the number of classrooms. Does that make sense?
Just to follow up on the setback, or the architectural setback for Ashland is really nicely done on the elevation you showed. Could you do something similar on Simpson? Because that appears to be a kind of abrupt building wall there facing the neighbors across the street.
So, thank you for your question. So right now, and I apologize if you're not 100% familiar with the site, but I've been living there for the last 18 months. So there's a fence really right here, okay? There's a fence, and then there's a backstop for baseball or softball right about this corner, okay? And so essentially, believe it or not, I realize there's a building there now and there's no building. There will be a building and there's no building there now. The setback here, from here to here is roughly 15, 18 feet, something like that. So it's actually set back from where we could locate it. Because of the zoning ordinance, which I know you're familiar with, we could build all the way to the property line, which is somewhere right here. So during the design process, again, the students being our number one concern, speaking for the school district, we made sure that we stepped the building back as much as humanly possible, realizing that the more we move it back, the less large green space would be in the back. So,
And I appreciate that setback because that does not always occur. I'm glad to see it. I think my question, though, is about the building itself, whether you could set back, say, the 3rd floor a little bit and just give some relief to, you know, what almost appears like a cliff if you're living on the opposite side of the street.
I think we can certainly look at, I did mention that let me go to that. Actually, I'll show you both sides. You see how we are able to set it back here a little bit? And so we can certainly try to do that here based on the programming needs. That's something we can look at for sure.
Commissioner Halleck?
Yeah, I have two questions regarding safety and security. The two questions are, I understand eighth graders, seventh graders, sixth graders, how do kindergartners get dropped off? And again, thinking about safety, and then what is the sequence and the procedure for security during drop-off time and after that for the two vestibules?
Got it.
And I understand they're centrally located, so I get that. That's a good
Yeah,
thing.
there's actually, let me see which, I guess let's go back here, because I think this one will be better. So, great question, and this is something that we have studied in depth. So at the end of the day, most students, not all of them, are going to be walking to school. I realize a kindergarten baby is not going to walk themselves to school. They're most likely going to be walking with their adult caregiver. Or dropped off. And so there are several entrances here, in here, in here, in here, and in here, that are going to be secured vestibules. Again, once you're on site, because most kids are going, because this is a neighborhood school meant for mostly walkers, they're going to walk in either one of these entries during the morning. Now, just to help answer that question, within the school, there's going to be staggered times as well. So not everybody's going to show up at the same time. And same with, so drop off and pick up.
Yeah, I guess I have a little bit of experience with young kids in this situation. And I guess what I'm wondering is there going to be someone stationed at every entrance? And after that, it's going to be locked and there's a camera or something like that?
For sure. So go ahead, you want to speak to that?
If I can speak to that, currently in all our buildings, we actually have recruited what we are calling concierges now. And they actually are stationed in each of the building, and they serve as a greeter. And so they make sure that entries are taken care of carefully. Additionally, we've hired additional crossing guards, and those folks will actually help with the start of the school day as well as the dismissal. And they will make sure the perimeters are safe when kids are dropped off and at the end of the day, too.
Commissioner Miranchov.
I will extend a little bit the questions from my colleagues. Regarding the program that you're designing with, your honest opinion, could it be shrunk even more so that we can reduce the FAR and, of course, we reduce the height of the building or create some setbacks on Simpson?
I can speak to the programmatic requirement of the building. The design of the building and the initial decision to have a building with a bigger footprint was based on the instructional need of the students who will be attending the building. If you recall, we estimate there will be between 800 to 900 kids who will be attending the building. There will be a combination of the regular school, the Fifth Ward School, and students will be coming from Road School. And the amount of activities that students nowadays need, they need media arts, for example. We need a STEM lab. We need all types of, we need a good gymnasium. And we also need, what COVID has taught us is, we need a more spacious space. The good ventilation to make sure that something tells me this is probably not going to be the only pandemic we'll have in the next few years. We want to make sure that we design the building forward-facing so that we have a comfortable ambient space for the kids who will be there. So based on what we've determined with the program need, we don't think it will be helpful for the education of the students to have a building that's smaller than what we've been able to accomplish so far.
And I totally understand that, but isn't this stemming from the combination of two schools?
Actually, the students who will be coming from Bessie Rose, they are 200 students. So I'm not sure that will make a significant impact on the number of kids who are there. We are basing the design as well as the enrollment projection on the number of kids who are in the Fifth Ward right now. That is actually one of the areas of the city that is actually growing in population. We engaged the service of a demographer over the last 2 years who actually did a detailed analysis of birth record and the aging of kids. And what we see, based on that projection, we see an actual growth in the area there. So even without the new school brings 200 kids, but without those new schools, it's estimated that the Fifth Ward will continue to grow because it's one of the areas in the city that's actually growing.
Understand. Thank you. The second question, again, extending the question about the parking. Did you consider, instead of going underground, covering the parking with a garden?
We have considered that, and again, it's a matter of,
It's a matter of budget, of course, I understand, but is it an option that could be feasible and reasonable at some point of time?
As the guy who's responsible for counting the money,
Of course. Everybody
also
does.
the guy who worked with the board to ensure that we have the funding to be able to develop this school. Based on the budget that we have to develop the school right now and the way the funding was structured and the timeline that we're working on, we don't have additional resources to be able to invest in covering the parking. I'm just being honest.
Okay, I hope you'll have. Thank you.
Commissioner Halleck?
This question is for staff. I don't understand. Two of the variances are, one of them is about the open parking in the front yard, and the other is loading in the front yard. And according to what I read, you determined that there's two front yards. Could you explain that? Because to me, you know, you could say that the front yard is on Simpson. That's where the front door is. The front door is not on Foster, which is, I think, where you determined the other front was?
Right. So it's not solely based on the configuration of a building that may be on the lot. It's the lot itself. And it's a unique lot in that it has frontages essentially on 4 different streets. But the first front yard is Simpson Street. The street side yard is Ashland. And then that second front yard would be considered to be Foster.
I just wanted to point out that I think it's a little bit, I understand your logic, but I think it's a little bit strange when you think about a site like this. I do. And the front yard, I would say, would be where the front door is, which is on Simpson. The reason I'm bringing it up is because if we're considering that there's 4 variances that they're asking for, 2 of them are associated, correct me if I'm wrong, 2 of them are associated with this fact that you've determined that there's 2 front yards. So if you kind of put that aside, then there's only really 2 variants that they're asking for. Just making the point.
Noted.
I have just a couple questions for you. You mentioned that there's an arrangement with Fleetwood Jourdain for parking. Can you elaborate a little bit on what kind of an arrangement that is?
absolutely. So there's been ongoing talks with all of the stakeholders, quite honestly, including Family Focus, City of Evanston, District 65, and the residents in the area. So at the end of the day, our studies have shown how many parking spots are in the immediate 2-block area, including on-surface within the parking lots. And so part of the talks with Family Focus is they have roughly 60 parking spots available on an everyday basis, and there's only they're using less than 50% during the day. Obviously, at times things increase, but for the most part, on average, they use less than 50% of the spots.
So Family Focus is going to help absorb some of that Fleetwood Jourdain.
They've been in talks with the school district. I think there's an agreement that's being worked on.
The other thing, to answer your question, is that during conversation with the city staff, there was a request that the district consider signing a use agreement between the district and Fleetwood Jourdain. And we did that. So we're committed to providing a minimal amount of parking space. And I believe that amount was 15 additional parking space that will be dedicated for Fleetwood Jourdain's use on the new building property. That's actually in writing.
All right, thank you. One of the other questions is, we've talked about this being kind of a combination of two schools, but I know this isn't all of Bessie Rhodes coming over. Can you kind of break down what percentage of Bessie Rhodes is being absorbed into this new school, and how much of it is the Fifth Ward School?
So to answer your question simply, it will be difficult to do, because what we are doing is we're estimating that the folks who attend Bessie Rhodes right now, they'll be offered a position, a place in the new Fifth Ward School. We don't know for sure that all of them will take those offers. So based on the data that we have right now, we're anticipating 200 of those from Bessie Rhodes will come to the Fifth Ward School. If that number holds true, then we have 700 other students who are going to different schools, such as Orrington, Lincolnwood, Kingsley, who live in the Fifth Ward right now, who will now go to school at the new Fifth Ward School.
And I'm going to ask you just a second to either come up to the microphone, just so you can be recorded, because I can hear you, but they can't hear you on the record necessarily.
Hello. Sarita Smith, Director of Student Assignments, so I'm the number cruncher. So we do currently know of the about 260 students that attend Bessie Rhodes, that 37% of them currently live in the Fifth Ward, and a lot of them are going there for bilingual services that we know we have to offer in that space. But to Dr. Obafemi's point, Raphael Obafemi's point, we are trying to figure out how families will choose, because not everybody will want to come just naturally through attrition is how we got to kind of that 200 number.
And what do you anticipate then being the impact on those remaining schools? I mean, you said 235?
So that's just Bessie Rhodes. So we currently at the Fifth Ward is divided into 5 different attendance areas. Right now, Kingsley and Lincolnwood hold the most of those students, over 140, 50 of those students from those schools respectively currently are bused there. And so there's going to definitely be an impact on capacity at those schools. But as our student assignment project, we're looking at how we can reutilize those capacities, because we are renting space for other programs. We have schools that are, we need some attention. So is there options to relocate? So we're kind of in that process now to look at those capacities and what we could utilize those spaces for.
All right, thank you. And then my final question is, we talked about the height of the building being basically about 45 feet, about 15 foot per floor. How did you arrive at 15 foot per floor?
Well, that's an easy question. So typically for a brand new school building, in order to get enough natural daylight deep into the classroom, the window head should be at about 10 feet, okay? And so that sets my initial ceiling. And for structural purposes, mechanical, electrical equipment to be hidden above the ceiling, there's a certain amount of structure that sandwich that's needed. So,
Okay. I was just wondering, because when I went to school, my ceilings were nowhere near 15 feet high,
Oh, they're between 9 and 10.
which could be why I ended up this way. Commissioner
I
Hallett.
also add too, if you look at some of our older buildings, such as Nichols, the kids of today, they're actually much bigger than when those buildings were built. We're finding out that back in the days, you can have 20 kids in the classroom, middle schooler. Now you're lucky if you can get 15 of them, because they're just so much bigger than the kids were back then. And that's
Well, I'm hoping that the kindergartners have not increased in size that much. If so,
Raphael and I don't have
we
that
could be
problem.
having some problems. Commissioner Halleck?
Go first.
Oh, I'm sorry, was it Commissioner Westerberg? I'm sorry.
Uh, So, without going into excruciating detail, can we talk about traffic and planning and the flow around the site? Obviously, that is going to be a huge impact on the neighbors, no matter how well it's coordinated, no matter how well it's done. And I understood the plans, what you were doing, but I have a couple concerns. One is, even with the staggered arrival of students, you may still have parents arriving at a certain time just because that's their schedule and they have to get there. The question is, what happens if they can't get close enough, and how do they park, where do they park, and what that does to the area. And then, because you have that loading dock or the loading area kind of as part of your driveway, how you really can coordinate that to make sure you don't have issues. And then finally, you do have businesses, not far away, and I'm just curious how, if you looked at those areas to try to determine what the impact could be.
Thank you. I'm going to invite Michael to help me answer that question, but in the meantime, while he gets up here, you made an important point about the loading area, which is back here. The curb cuts in and out of Ashland and Foster Street, this loop, it is not meant for drop-off at all for the exact same reasons you stated, because there is going to be deliveries and obviously staff parking in that area. And so we made sure, absolutely sure, that no students or parents or buses would enter the parking lot for these drop-off areas. And I'm going to ask Michael to maybe talk a little bit more about the in-depth traffic study.
I thought I was going to get away without coming up here. Michael Worthman with KLOA. It's good to see everybody again. We conducted the traffic study, transportation study for the proposed school. Excellent questions. First of all, similar with all schools, we are going to have some congestion around those pickup and drop-off times. It's just a given with the fixed start and end times of schools. There's a number of things, characteristics with this school that should help minimize that and limit it. The first is that it's a neighborhood school. The boundary at the most is 2/3 to 3/4 of a mile. So we're hoping and expecting a lot of the residents to walk to school. And, one of the things we looked at is we don't want to make it too convenient for them to pick up and drop off. We really want this to be a walking school, a neighborhood school. I live in Oak Park, and all of our elementary schools had no busing. And I lived 4 or 5 blocks. I had to cross a major road, and we walked our children most every day. It was just more convenient to do that. That being said, there will be people who drive. But the first one, it is a neighborhood school. And we think and we're hoping that most people, it may be more convenient to walk to even try to pick up and drop off their students. Second is the fact that the 2 schools will be staggered start, an hour in the morning and 15 minutes in the afternoon, which is great because it helps distribute that traffic, The other is the school district will have a robust before school and after school programs. So that surging of traffic will be significantly reduced because it will be distributed over a longer time. All of that will help to reduce some of that surging of traffic. That being said, given the urban area, we really don't have a pickup and drop off. We're going to have 2 curb cuts. One will be for the buses on the south side of Simpson, and we also have the Ashland curb cut or lay-by lane. But similar to most schools, what we want people to do is park and walk their kids to school, or park and drop them off in the neighborhood. We did a parking study in the neighborhood, looking 4 or 5 blocks out. And there's more than enough parking in the neighborhood. Now, is it directly in front of the school? No. And that's an incentive not to drive. You know, it may be quicker for you to walk the same distance as where you're going to park. Several things on the parking. So let me look at my notes. As it pertains to the long-term parkers, which are the staff, you've heard a couple things. There'll be 83 parking spaces. We're looking at about 70 staff members, and about 85% of them drive. So the parking lot is going to be sufficient for the staff. When you add in the Fleetwood Jordanian, parking, there may be some spillover onto the street, but that will be more of the short-term parking. And as we discussed, as you've heard, the school district is working with Family Focus to use some of theirs. They're also going to look to see if they can get some parking from some of the churches in the area. So they're going to look for some additional overflow parking, and that is one of the recommendations and conditions that staff came up and the school district is willing to do. Also, the school district has a very robust program to get their staff to use alternative modes of transportation, and the doctor can speak to that, but they're looking to do that. So the parking demand for that long-term parking will be pretty much accommodated within that lot. Then you go to that short-term parking during pickup and drop-off. And once again, that's very short-term. That's 5 minutes probably in the morning, maybe in the afternoon. It will be 10 to 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes if some people come early. But once again, this is very short-term parking. We're expecting it to be low, given that it's a walking school and that distribution of traffic. More importantly, in the morning, most of that parking is going to occur between 8 and 9 o'clock before most of the businesses open. And then in the afternoon, the businesses are already parked. So the students, parents, are going to have to find a place to park. Also, the amount of parking in the afternoon is usually less than in the morning because so many parents and caregivers are working. They don't pick up their students in the afternoon. They either walk home or they're using those after school. So we understand we're going to have an impact on that parking. We think we're taking care of that long-term parking as well as we can. And the pickup and drop-off parking, once again, that's very short-term, 15, 20 minutes, and they'll find space. I was out there again today. There's a lot of parking on Foster available. There's a lot of parking on Simpson. Now, is it 2.5 blocks away? Yes. And some parent will say, well, it's easier for me to walk 3 blocks from my house than it is to drive and then have to walk 2 blocks. So, you know, we understand there's going to be some congestion, but we're trying to do everything we can to minimize those impacts. And I will say staff provided a number of recommendations, which the school district, I understand, has agreed to, conditions, recommendations, to really protect the neighborhood, to have us look at it afterwards if need be, to work with the community, all of that. They need to come up with a circulation plan and a parking plan 6 months after it's approved. That will be a collaboration with staff as well as the neighbors. They're going to come up with a safety plan for those crosswalks and all of that. There was like 5 conditions in there I'm sure you're aware of. So excellent questions. We think we're doing everything we can to minimize that impact, but there will be some impacts. But once again, it's really going to be that pickup and drop off that's 15 minutes, 20 minutes that you see at most schools. And I'll be here for any questions that you have. Thank you.
I have one question. So currently on Simpson and partially on Ashland, during the day there are plenty of parked cars, mainly for the businesses that are over there.
Right.
And the business district actually goes, I would say, a little bit north. But unfortunately on Ashland, on the north part from Simpson, most of the businesses have driveways or entrances to garages or entrances for loading. So parking on Ashland, north of Simpson, is relatively limited. So where do the businesses that usually park on Simpson, on both sides of Simpson, but I emphasize the south part, which is usually always busy with parked cars, where will these businesses park in the future?
Well, you know, one important fact is the parking for the school will only be restricted during pickup and drop-off. So you'll be able to use it during the middle of the day or after the school hours.
I didn't understand this portion of your, let's say, notes. It was written that the how do you call it?
Lay-by lane.
Lanes, that is for the school buses on Simpson, will be used for parking out of school hours.
Right.
How will this be controlled?
Signage.
Do you risk that the bus will not be able to
Well,
take the
you
students?
know, if it becomes an issue, then maybe you have to restrict it during the school day, and then you allow it after 4:30 or 5.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you're making it a matter of control.
It's a matter of control, ticketing.
Understand.
You know, can add to some fun by ticketing. And then there's parking on the north side of Simpson. Some of that is 2-hour parking, some of it
That's
is 30
correct.
minutes. Today I drove down Ashland and the east side of Ashland, north of Simpson. All of it is parking, and there wasn't a soul parking on it. So there's parking spaces. Are we gonna push the parking into different areas in the neighborhood? Yes, we are. There's nothing more we can say about that. But
Thank you.
once again, it's for a short period of time.
Thank you.
No problem.
Commissioner Halleck?
I have to ask this because just today and this evening, we received several letters from people in the community about this, and I have to admit, I have no opinion on this, but I was wondering, this isn't a traffic question, on the synthetic turf. The letters that we received said that it's bad for kids, it causes cancer, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if you could address that, but I guess my question is, for a school, why was synthetic turf chosen over grass?
So as we've mentioned before, there has been a months of talk between the community, District 65, and quite honestly, City of Evanston staff. And so because of the nature of the park and the amount of usage, we quite honestly foresee it would be extremely difficult to maintain proper natural grass field because of the usage. And city staff, I'm not going to say they're endorsing it, natural or synthetic turf, but they are definitely not against it because, again, we are willing to share the play field with the city. So it's going to be used hopefully year-round, and quite honestly, it's going to get beat up.
Yeah, has this been used anywhere else in Evanston? For schools?
I don't believe there's a natural or a synthetic field in any of the District 65 schools.
I just want to point out that even though in the design we have synthetic field in there, no final decision has been made as to what the play field will look like. That was an option that was being considered,
Yeah.
but no final determination has been made.
Because I think we received several letters. I don't have an opinion on this, but it might be worth looking into to see if there is a problem, as they say.
We'll be happy to do that. We're not married to synthetic, and it was just an option that we were considering. And if we can figure out a way to have natural grass and still be able to make sure the kids enjoy the benefit of being able to use the field year-round, we will certainly look at it.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant at this point? Yeah.
Going back to the artificial turf, right now that field is used for football, for little kids football. Why would we be replacing that now with the thought of artificial turf?
I think just going back to the different, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I mean, because the maintenance of natural grass versus now you're going to have dirt and grime and all kinds of stuff basically be part of that turf. How would you clean that? How would you maintain a more, I guess, clean or sanitary environment versus natural grass?
Your point is well taken. As I mentioned just a few minutes ago, that was a design idea. We have now made a final determination whether to go with turf or whether to go with natural grass. And we will explore the possibility of having it be natural grass instead of artificial turf, because the district will be responsible for maintaining that. So we want to do what is in the best interest of the community. And the community they've given us feedback in the design process so far. We've incorporated that into the design of the building. We will incorporate the response that we've gotten and the opposition to the artificial turf, and we'll look at replacing that with natural grass.
I have just a couple questions, and one of these may involve staff. Can you speak a little to the stormwater management? I mean, obviously, we're taking a green space and building a good-sized building on it. So what is the stormwater management plan?
So there is one, for sure. Right now, we're looking at underground structures, most likely under the playfield and under the parking area. The City of Evanston, WRD are very strict. We have to meet all kinds of state codes, so stormwater management will be managed per code.
I just wanted to make sure that was on the record for us.
Yep, absolutely.
The other thing that came up during DAPR, and I think this is more of a staff question, is there was talk of widening Ashland Avenue. Was that just talk, or was that like something we're exploring, or what is the what's going on with that?
So that is actually at this point a recommended condition
Okay.
of approval, so it's intended that that actually does occur.
Okay. And would that be the city covering that? Would that be the applicant covering that? Would it be a shared? How does that kind of work?
That I think I might pass to Laura Biggs with our Public Works Department.
I saw her sitting here and she was looking very bored, so I figured I'd throw her a question.
I don't think she was sworn in, Chair.
I don't believe you were here for the swearing in, so I will ask you to raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth throughout the course of the proceedings?
I do.
Thank you very much, Ms. Biggs. If you would please state your name and address for the record and your occupation.
My name is Laura Biggs. I'll use my city address, which is the Civic Center, 2100 Ridge Avenue, and I am the city engineer for the city of Evanston.
Thank you. So there was a question about how is the street widening funded? Is that something the applicant does? Is that something the city does? Is it a shared expense? Do you?
I am fairly certain that is not in the city budget, nor is it in the District 65 budget for this school, so that would be something that would be further negotiated
Okay.
as we proceed forward with the project.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Westerberg?
Sorry, one last question, and this is really for staff. Your memo indicated that there probably will be some impact on the programming for Fleetwood Jourdain with this development. What are the concerns there? What do you see happening? And, you know, how can the city plan for that? Or what do you need to respond to in terms of the community there?
Again, my name is Laura Biggs. I am not part of the Parks and Rec Department, but I've been involved quite a bit as we've looked with the Parks and Rec Department at our programming at Fleetwood and how it's affected by the school. And people on the committee or in the public may be aware that we did spend a significant amount of time with the school district and their consultant working to try to understand if there are opportunities for shared facilities. What we found in a nutshell is the interior spaces that we all use, gyms, cafeteria, auditorium, we tend to all need them at the exact same times. And so for interior spaces, that is not a really good shared use opportunity. Exterior spaces are a little bit different. The school district has a high need during the day. Fleetwood Jourdain tends to be more after school and on the weekend. We operate robust summer camp and after school childcare programs there. And we have asked the district to work with us, and they have come to the table and said, yes, we do want to support that. What exactly it looks like is really still to be determined. So they have agreed that during school holidays and summer camp periods, they would, the fields would definitely be available for the city of Evanston to use for our childcare programming, and that is a huge thing for us. The after-school portion, we are still negotiating between, they're looking at what athletics they are planning to offer and what we offer. So there are likely going to be some impacts. A lot depends on the use agreements, but so far we found them to be really willing to commit to the vast majority of the time, fill time that we need, we would have available. There is an impact to the loss of the tennis courts, which is not, I don't believe that's programmed a lot by Fleetwood Jourdain as direct programming, but it is used by the community. They are relocating the basketball courts and the playground, and we would need to further talk about the use of that. But again, our time periods when we need those are very different.
Thank you. I'd like to move into public comment unless there's any other questions from commissioners. At this point, you may have a seat. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have 9 people signed up, I believe. Is this?
Yes.
That's my entire list. I'm going to give everyone roughly 3 minutes. I'm not going to be real strict with time, but I'm going to ask you to please confine your comments to the project at hand. And as I call your name, please come up and just state your name for the record. That's fine. I've noticed there's a couple names here where I'm guessing you're is it Zim? So I will reorder things so that you can have the kids go first. So I don't know if you want to go in any specific order, but I have Amanda, Ash, and Jack Zim signed up. Okay.
The sign stated that unless we were not going to be here in person, that we could just, speak like now. I didn't realize there was a sign sheet.
I'm just going to ask you to sign in then on there. Anybody else, there will be one circulating there. But at this point, I'm going to ask Jack Zim to come up and begin public comment.
Hello, my name is Jack Zim, and I'm a 5th grader in Evanston. I'm here to ask that the new 5th Ward school use grass instead of artificial turf. I play soccer, and I know that sometimes the fields at Robert Crown get pretty hot, hotter than grass, way hotter than grass. I have also learned that most injuries also occur on turf as well. The U.S. national soccer teams will only play on grass to limit injuries. Also, artificial grass increases the risk of cancer. This is a school my younger brother may attend, and I'm worried about him. I shaved my head this year and last year and for pediatric cancer and raised almost $3,000. Thank you. And I have 2 close friends with brain cancer. Please don't allow my younger brother or any other kids or anyone to be exposed to artificial turf daily at recess. I don't want him to get cancer or anyone else. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next up, okay.
Okay. Hi, my name is Asher Zeem, and I'm an 8th grader in Evanston. I'm concerned about the increased risk of cancer in artificial turf. Recent reports have found a potential link between the cancer and 6 deaths of baseball players from the Phillies and artificial turf. They all died of a brain cancer called glioblastoma. According to the American Association of Neurological Surgeons, glioblastoma is one of the deadliest cancers and can result in a death in 6 months or less. My aunt also died of glioblastoma. I was worried when I found out they might use turf, since my aunt died of brain cancer. Cancer is something that is very serious and should not be overlooked. The plan is approved that elementary school kids will be unknowingly play on the turf that could give them cancer. Not just that, but my brother and his friends could go to this school. The use of turf could impact many students in 20 years in the future. Please use grass. Thank you.
Thank you. And Amanda Zeem.
Hi, hi Commissioners, City staff. I would have dressed up more. I just had leg surgery yesterday, but it's that important that I wanted to come today. So, my name is Amanda Zeem. I live at 1632 Wesley Avenue, less than a mile from the proposed 5th Ward School. I have 3 school-aged children, 2 of which you just met. We are considering sending our youngest, who is currently a student in District 65, to Bessie Rhodes, which is part of the new 5th Ward School. I reviewed the plans for the proposed school, and I'm very concerned about the 35,800 square feet of artificial turf for the kids' play field. It's not mentioned there, but it was, in the plans, in the packet. So I don't know how many citizens really understand that it's actually artificial turf. Artificial turf increases the risk of cancer, injury, and it also becomes much hotter than grass, creating a heat island. These types of fields are increasingly becoming banned in cities and professional sports across the country. Recently, Boston, Massachusetts banned artificial turf in their parks citywide. Per The Guardian, the NFL Players League is pressuring the league to ban artificial turf due to increases in injuries. And as was mentioned, the U.S. soccer teams only play on grass for the same reason. Artificial turf contains toxic chemicals involving VOCs and carcinogens. These chemicals are toxic. The exposure gets worse over time as the field degrades. Grass is a much safer option for our kids to play on. One of the Land Use Commission standards when evaluating the development is standard number 1. Number 1, the requested variation will not have a substantial adverse impact on the use, enjoyment, or property values of adjoining properties. This development greatly reduces the green space available to Fleetwood Jourdain Community Center, Family Focus, and the residential neighbors. In addition, much of the proposed, quote, green space is actually artificial turf, which is not green at all. Adding a dangerous artificial turf has an adverse impact on the neighbors and the community, which is historically under-resourced Black and brown families. I ask that the proposed 5th Ward school plan be revised to include natural grass in place of artificial turf. Grass will also allow for more trees and a larger tree canopy. As a commissioner on the Preservation Commission, I am familiar with the Climate Action and Resilience Plan. This artificial turf field runs counter to the stated ideals of this plan. DAPR recommends multiple conditions on this project if it is approved per the packet. In summary, if the Land Use Commission decides to approve, I would recommend that I would recommend for an added condition that the artificial turf be turned to grass. It matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zeem. And thank you for bringing your children out to testify as well. I will go now to Mark, is it Mark Malchuk?
Thank you for your time and the great questions for the applicants. I do request, I have about 10 minutes of data that I've put together and studies I would love to be able to give to you so I can talk in much less time to give other people that if I can hand that out afterwards, appreciate it.
Sure.
Great. My name is Mark Malchuk. And I am one of the co-owners of Brella Productions, as well as the building 1601 Simpson and 1607 Simpson, which are mixed use and commercial, as well as residential property at the corner of Simpson and Ashland, which is right across the street from the proposed Fifth Ward School. My business has been in Evanston for 30 years, 17 of which being in this location. Additionally, various members of my family, as well as a number of the employees, have lived in the Fifth Ward. I'm in favor of the Fifth Ward School, but I'm here to formally oppose the granting of any of the major variants requested until the architects and the District 65 provide a much more detailed solution to the challenges around the density of the building footprint on the parcel, impact of the added height of the building on the surrounding properties, as well as the significant parking and traffic congestion issues that will result from the current proposed school designs, and they're up to 900 student capacity projections, as has been discussed, obviously, in detail today. The first variation I want to specifically pose is 6-15-9-7, which is adding 20 feet of height to the school building from 35 feet to 55 feet. Adding a very tall, block-long building along Simpson and Ashland will have a substantial adverse effect on the use, enjoyment, and property values of the residences and businesses facing the school. Adding 20 additional feet of height to the building will severely impact views and block the south-facing units in our building's sunlight, especially during the winter, as well as for pedestrians and people traveling. Neither does it address the dark canyon that will be created along the roadways for pedestrians and visitors to our neighborhood. This is due to the 55-foot tall and now 45 in some places building along this block-long expanse, or the health issues caused by increased exhaust from cars and buses that will be generated and trapped in this corridor. For the traffic and parking issues, the architects in District 65 are proposing that they will, quote, figure this out within 6 months after approval has been granted, and as stated in one place in their document, quote, after the school has been completed. That consideration is way too late to hold them accountable for the significant adjustments required to remedy their currently very generic and unrealistic suggestions, in my opinion. I feel the architects are simply pushing the issue down the road to be dealt with after they are done with construction and it becomes a city of Evanston and a local community issue. The parking study was done on a single day, Wednesday, March 1st, and given the dynamic nature of the neighborhood, one day is hardly reflective of the full nature of the challenges, but to speak to the study assumptions, they claimed an overly optimistic average of 60% availability or 250 spaces available during the arrival and departure school hours. Those parking space averages are primarily due to the parking availability on the roads much further south of the school, not directly adjacent to the primary entrances, which are accessed via the very congested business district to the north. In a very unofficial study, we had our staff go out today at 9 o'clock to count the percentages. They were much closer to 40%. And this afternoon, speaking to one of the previous speakers, there was almost no parking on Ashland during the afternoon time. And Simpson, again, had very little as we approached the afternoon and early evening. The second specific variation I oppose is the proposed lay-by lanes on Simpson and Ashland. Not only will they require the removal of many mature trees, but for Simpson Street, it will remove approximately 20 existing much-needed long-term parking spots with no adequate plan to replace them. This is in addition to the potential issues on Ashland with the removal of those long-term parking spots, which were addressed, obviously, much earlier today as well. In the interest of time, I will not address all the remaining issues discovered in the 265-page document, but simply ask you to please reject these requests for major variances until the architects and District 65 have presented a more thought-out and specific plan for addressing the issues that would be caused by the new school to the existing local residents, as well as to the many businesses that provide the lifeblood of the Fifth Ward. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Malchuk.
Should I hand these to you all now?
Yes, please.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
The next speaker I have is, and I'm sorry if I can't read your name correctly, Julie Bonea.
Hi, my name is Adam Kingsley. I'm actually Julie Benea's attorney. I think I indicated on the sign-in sheet. So she is a homeowner on Ashland Avenue within 250 feet of the school. So I do intend to, instead of making, I just want some clarification, instead of having her make or me make a public comment, what I'd like to do, and I understand I have the right to do, is ask questions of various witnesses and then present her testimony in sort of a question and answer format under the code. So I just want to indicate that that's my plan. Now I can wait to do that until.
I was going to say, let me bump you toward the end
that's
here
fine.
so I can get other people through. So I'll call you back up in a moment.
No problem.
Jerome Summers.
Okay, I'm Jerome Summers. I'm from, I live on Hartree, 1941 Hartree. My family's been in the Fifth Ward since the 1890s. I actually went to Foster School, was a patrol boy there, and former District 65 school board member. First of all, I want to thank the school board for stopping having our students, every student in the Fifth Ward was a immigrant student, what do you call them? A migrant student to other places. And it was terrible for our community, terrible. Anyway, about this school right here, what I would like to see, actually, I think a fourth floor would be a very good thing. And also, I mean, it might be something of an inconvenience for the people on those two blocks, but it does not destroy property values because I get offers on my house once or twice a week. And that's all over the Fifth Ward. Also, if that building were moved exactly like it is now, but moved to the south to more hug up against Fleetwood, you could keep that green space and wouldn't need any AstroTurf. AstroTurf is really a bad thing. Also, when I think about Fleetwood, Family Focus, and the school there, people in the community think of that as in one breath. This, we talk about the school like it's an insular thing, but it's not an insular thing. That whole campus is a safe place for kids in our community for generations. And for instance, my parents were married 58 years. I think of them in one breath, Edna and Bill. I think of community of Fleetwood, Jourdain, a school, and Family Focus in one breath. And that's how most people in our community think of that. So you might want to consider that in your evaluations of things. Also, I want to know if Bessie Rhodes, over time, 8 years, 10 years, could be absorbed into the Fifth Ward School and just be part of the Fifth Ward School, like it's instead of two different entities who think of themselves as different entities, because they all live there. We all live there. Also, strong after-school programs, I think that's a good thing. Community inclusion. Another reason why I think a building would be better moved further north, further south, is because the green space here tells everybody else in the community, stay out of here. That's what it looks like to me. Whereas the way it is now, people can just come. People in the community can just come. I think of this as a community school. Excuse me. We do have things like, and I don't know what the coordination is between Family Focus and Fleetwood, but there's two other gyms, there's a couple of other theaters, there's a couple other places that can be used as cafeterias and eating spaces. So I don't know if you guys work on that, or if you just think of this as one school, but to us, it's bigger than that. Let's see what else. Also, if you had 4 stories, which may or may not be in the cards, I don't know. But when you have fewer stories, you have fewer classrooms, which means the classrooms are larger student population per classroom. It seems to me. I don't know for sure, but that's how it seems to me. So, excuse me. I think a 4th story would be in order. Does anybody have any questions of me? I got some opinions about this thing. You good?
I think we're good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Summers. Robin Brown? She had to leave early, okay. Cecile McHugh? Here she comes.
About the artificial turf? I'm here to voice opposition to the proposed large expanse of artificial turf. The current comprehensive plan emphasizes the importance of the quality of the natural environment. I'm expecting the updated comprehensive plan to state that we should, as much as possible, be stewards for the natural environment, given recent efforts to ban glass blowers, encourage no-mow maize, use bird-friendly materials, etc. Artificial turf is a huge step backwards. The children who go to this school deserve natural green space. I've heard that a fall on artificial turf can hurt and that the turf can get very hot. It's alarming to read that artificial turf commonly contains the forever chemicals PFAS, and in March of this year, the Biden-Harris administration proposed a standard to protect communities from PFAS in drinking water. Please replace the artificial turf in the plan with natural green space. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McHugh. Staff, do you have more signatures? Thank you. Jeff Touch, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced your last name.
Hello, Jeff Tosh. I live at 2019 Darrow, which is within 500 feet of the property. And I'm 100% for the Fifth Ward School, but the money's in the details, and there's a lot of details that are missing from this plan that directly relate to some of these variations that are being asked for. People have already spoke about the need for Ashland Avenue to be widened and Foster. I challenge any of you people on the commission to go drive down those streets during 4 o'clock when buses are rolling down by Fleetwood and see what it's like to try and navigate that street with current conditions. And now if we get these variations and we have added traffic, it's going to make it that much worse. Another detail I'm very concerned about is on Dewey Avenue up there. You see near the cul-de-sac, it does not tie into the family-focused parking. And if there's this agreement that's going on, currently the family-focused parking lot is accessed through the alley, which is my alley. And our neighborhood is filled with kids who are going to want to go to that playground. They're going to want to go to that field to play. And there's already cars that are dangerously flying down that alley. And now you're going to add 900 kids into the mix and different activities. And I don't know how that parking lot is allowed to exist in its current state with the only access to it being an alley when there's an opportunity to tie it into Dewey Avenue's cul-de-sac. Another concern I have is that pretty much this entire site is 100% impervious surface. I don't know how that's not a variation that's being asked for. How is this site allowed to be 100% impervious? And like the architect said, you know, the water table is extremely high there. My sump pump goes off pretty much every 2 minutes when it's not raining. And so now we're going to have all of this water. Where is it going to go if we have a turf field? And it's going to go into my neighbors' yards because it already happens when it rains a lot. And if this site is allowed to be developed this way, I don't know where all that rainwater is going to go. How big that tank is going to need to be massive, considering it's 100% impervious. And so I would say that before any of these variations are approved, that a lot of these details are worked out with the infrastructure and the site. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Tosh. Tina Vinson. Going once, going twice for Tina Vinson. Haley Green.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for your time. I recently purchased 2033 Ashland. It is, you know, within feet of the proposed drop-off zone on Ashland. As he previously mentioned, the speaker before me, you know, with one bus going down the street or even one car, the parking on the side of the street with houses, it's, you know, it's a one-way street basically. with kids going to the park already as it is, I've seen numerous times where I thought I was going to look out of my office window and see a kid get hit in the street. It's very dangerous as is. I think the study that was done about the parking, absolutely insanely ridiculous. Like it's not even close. Like nothing was mentioned about the again, it may seem a little crazy, but just north of Simpson on Ashland, there's a doggy daycare that is expanding. I mean, like every time tenant basically leaves that space, they expand. The drop off in the morning alone from just the doggy daycare backs up onto my street. Additionally, widening the street would have to be, like a condition, as she mentioned that it already is. I am the only home on that street that is not multifamily, so I'm the only one, with like actually access to a garage, other than if the tenant, if the owner lives on the property rented out. So every single person that owns a vehicle doesn't park in my alley, right? They do park on the street. So I would definitely propose, if going forward, not only widening the street, but we definitely need to make some sort of resident parking only. It's only fair, I think, for those of us that moved to the area or own property there, that we get one single spot at least. I think there was also mention, and again, maybe just some more information that I could get at some point, is just when was that survey that was mentioned sent out? I've lived in the home since November of 22 and haven't received a lick of mail regarding this. I actually missed the first meeting that was actually held at the Fleetwood Jourdain Center because I didn't even know about it, and I live, again, within like 15 feet of where the proposed school is going to be. Again, I think the estimate of, kids that are going to walk versus getting dropped off is grossly miscalculated. I think we see even at Evanston, if you drive down and go to the Evanston Public High School, 15 to 20 minutes in the morning during drop-off for congestion. Are you kidding me? It's hours of time, just like extra traffic. And again, that's fine. I do want a school in this community, but I think, as one of the other residents stated, right now, the way it's laid out, it's grossly, affecting all of the neighbors and business owners, whereas if you were to just move the L shape the other way and have the field visible from the street, it creates such a, I think prettier view, and I think most of the residents would be happier, and then I think you could also get away with even a taller school. So I think, just like many of the previous residents stated, I think a lot of things in the details are not worked out. I think single day parking study is insane. I think just observing, like I said, the doggy daycare alone causes a traffic jam. So I would like to just propose that you guys reject the plan as is, and require a lot more planning, because 6 months after the school is built is, again, as another resident said, way too late to address anything related to parking. And lastly, one thing I had noticed throughout is that there was like 70 staff or something, and I could be getting it wrong, that we're going to need to park, and then that leaves 13 stalls, for like the Fleetwood Jourdain Center, who I think now has I counted the other day, like 15 to 20. So it's like they're already going to lose, more parking just because of like staff parking. And I agree that there does need to be more parking, but it's definitely not going to spill over onto the streets cleanly. And they're just I think the main issue really is the parking and the traffic. It is going to be very dangerous for the residents. So thank you for your time.
There's somebody else who didn't sign up, I've been told. Is that true? Yes. Yes, if you'd like to come up at this point and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Michael Maroos. I did raise my hand to be sworn in. I'm president of Maroos & Company. We're a real estate appraisal and consulting firm located in Park Ridge, Illinois. And I have extensive experience in Evanston, and having worked many years for you on various land use issues. I submitted a value impact study looking at the proposed plan that's in your packet, so I'm not going to go through the whole thing. But basically, what this does is look at the proposed use and then looks at the neighborhood, looks at similar situations to determine if the proposed plan has an impact on value. So in my career, I've probably done 300 impact studies, quarries, schools, senior facilities, churches, wind farms, recycling facilities, etc. And actually several of different studies in Evanston. And in this situation, what we really did is looked at the proposed plan and then looked at a couple similar situations, including a couple schools, including Dewey and Orrington, that are what I would say underparked, very limited parking. And then we looked at value trends in the neighborhood. We looked at sales of properties almost immediately proximate, and those in the same neighborhood a couple blocks away, and also looked at Evanston High School, which is a little different animal just because of the huge intensity of use. You've got, you know, soccer, football, lacrosse, swimming, go on and on. And in all the situations, and again, this is a suburban urban environment, I did not see any indication of negative impact. In fact, a neighborhood school and the quality of the school district is probably one of the most important things that impacts value. We've heard about density and height. This is a town that's loaded with height, loaded with density, loaded with apartment buildings next to expensive single-family residents. That's part of the charm and the character, and it clearly hasn't negatively impacted property values. I'm not here for a taste test. Mine is really looking at the impact and the benefits of the community and this immediate neighborhood, and really looking at it from a value standpoint. Any questions?
Mark Melchok, 1601 Simpson. Did you take into account any of the commercial comparables for businesses that are next to a brand-new school?
In the study, there's not a specific comparison to businesses, but I've probably appraised over 2,000 commercial properties in and around the metro area, and having a vibrant neighborhood, activity in the neighborhood, and quality of new modernization and development virtually in all instances has a positive impact.
And I read your study. How about specifically the removal of green space as it affects residences? Because currently, we obviously have a very large park, long view, big open space that's been stated many times. We would lose that complete green space to a wall of property on both Ashland and Simpson that is 55 feet high, 45 in some areas. Have you looked at a comparable that it impacts residences and businesses immediately across the street from green space to a wall 55 feet high?
See, that's a very good question. And as an appraiser looking at land use, you not only look at what's there, but what can be there. And the school district has owned the property for many years and had, per zoning, has the right to build a school. This is not a park that's owned by a park district. This is not a forest preserve. This is not something that has restricted covenants on it where you can't build a building. So you can't look at every lot that it's going to be a perpetual park paid for forever. So that really isn't a good comparison, because per zoning, you can build a building on it.
Thank you.
But the question, but it's not a park per se that's going to be a park forever. It's just like somebody sitting next to a subdivision or in a subdivision sitting next to 100 acres that has the highest and best use for residential development. Unless you own the land, you're not entitled to control it.
Thank you. Yes. And your name? Oh, okay, okay.
Hi, everyone. Sula Kim, 932 Hinman, Evanston, District 65, Vice President. I already submitted a comment, but I also wanted to speak publicly tonight. I think, I hope that you focus on what we're here for, which is building the Fifth Ward School, a long delayed and deferred return of a neighborhood school. And I want to speak as a parent as well. My children attend Lincoln Elementary. My fifth grader is about to graduate from there, so I've been there about 9 years. And I cannot tell you the value of a neighborhood school that we can walk to every day. We live in a pretty dense area with businesses nearby. There is some congestion during drop-off and pickup, but there is no way I would give up my neighborhood school because of those minor inconveniences. It is dense with condominiums as well as businesses. And we lived across the street from the school in a condo with street parking only. We made it work because we loved being able to walk our children to the school. They play on the fields after school. Their friends are in the neighborhood. They get to walk to and from school on their own. I know that from fifth grade on up, kids are not going to want to be picked up by their parents. They can walk to and from school by themselves. Middle schoolers go after school to the Starbucks, to the cafes. That's what a neighborhood school does. It becomes a vibrant center of life for the community. And I think it's, despite whatever issues we may want to deal with, I think what we should focus on is building that school without delay, without further delay. We need to have that school built on the timeline that we've set with the budget that we have set to the greatest possible quality and efficiency that we can for this community that has been without a neighborhood school for generations. My children have benefited from a neighborhood school. Many children in this town have benefited from a neighborhood school, except those in the Fifth Ward. What are we waiting for? Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think there's anyone else other than, I'm looking up your name here, Mr. Kinsley.
So if it's okay with the chair, what I'd like to do is first exercise my right to ask some questions of the people who have spoken, and then after that, present Ms. Benai as a witness.
Okay.
Okay. So the first question I guess I have is for Ms. Biggs, and this has to do with the widening of Ashland, and I guess I was unaware of that. Can you describe to me what the plan or proposal is for the widening of Ashland Avenue?
Thank you. Currently, that is a conceptual plan. It would need to be done in a sensitive way in order to minimize tree impacts, but there are some serious concerns about, irrelevant concerns, not irrelevant, they are relevant concerns, about as parents are directed to that side of the school to do drop-off, not all parents pull off into the pull-off lane. There's concerns that people will be just stopping or double parking in order to be able to get their children out quickly and into the safe zone closest to the door, that they are not going to be willing to be patient. And because the traffic concerns that may develop from the continual blocking of the street, that will impede the ability of drop-off to occur.
Okay, that sounds pretty serious. So you're talking about widening it to the west or to the east or both?
That is something that would have to be done, we would have to investigate as to the best option.
Well, I guess I'm a little confused, because if you widen it to the west, then essentially you'd be taking I'm sorry. If you widen it to the west, and this, everybody understands that this photo is, our north-south is not oriented correctly, so the west is actually to the south, is that right? The west is to the bottom. Oh, okay.
No.
Okay, you got it.
East is down, yeah.
Thank you. All right. So let me rephrase my question then. On the east side is where the residents are, the east side of Ashland, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So if you widen it towards the east side, you would be taking some of the parkway away?
Yes.
Okay. And how much of the parkway would you be taking away if you widen it to the east side?
So I have not developed a full design, and I do not have that kind of detail right now.
What's the recommendation on that?
The recommendation is that we would look at widening as an option, that typically a street, typically there is a certain width, and I apologize for not having this information at my fingertips, but Ashland, depending on where you're located, I believe is around 24 feet wide, and the goal would be to widen it to a place where you would be able to essentially have two-way traffic with people pulling off and not blocking things. And so that is the consideration.
How wide would it have to be to accommodate two-way traffic?
Again, I know that you are,
I'm going to move us along a little bit because we're talking very hypotheticals.
Yes.
I don't think Ms. Biggs is quite prepared to answer these questions.
I am not prepared to answer that. I would have to
know you
look
have a lot
at
to
it.
cover, and I'm not going to give you all night to cover things, so I'm
Sir,
going to ask you to move
I
along.
don't mean to put it on the spot, but as I think, maybe I didn't clarify that Ms. Benail is a 2025 Ashland. So she is one of the
She's one of the homeowners, and we typically give about 3 minutes, and you want to conduct a hearing, so I'm going to move you along with those questions,
I'm
please.
just, and maybe council can help us out, that I'm just exercising the right that's in the code. The code doesn't limit me to 3 minutes. What the
No,
code-
but our
what
rules do.
what
The
the
chair gets to decide the amount of time to give
Okay. You know
to
what,
each individual
I'm gonna
speaker.
ask for a continuance of the hearing so I can more fully.
And that's within your right, and I will ask you to present that in writing to me,
Well,
please.
I did. It's in the letter that I sent.
Okay, you said you reserved the right to, but I don't recall there being an
Okay,
actual,
well, right now, I said in the letter I reserve the right, and now I'm asking if you need me to write that on a piece of paper, I will. But I made it clear in the letter that I was reserving the right. And to be clear, the codes provide special, and maybe council can help us out here. The code provides special rights for landowners who are impacted by the project. And the two rights that it provides are the right to ask questions of people who presented, and also to present their own testimony. Now, it's impossible to do both of those things in 3 minutes. I mean, that would be a due
and
process.
I'm not going to hold you
It
to
would be
3
a
minutes.
due process violation.
I'm not going to hold you to 3 minutes, but you've spent 3 minutes asking one single question to Ms. Biggs,
I
who's
don't-
told you she does not have that
Okay, but
information on hand.
I don't think that's, I don't think that's a fair characterization of what
If
I
you're,
was
if you're
doing with
asking
Ms.
for a
Biggs.
continuance, then I will gladly put a continuance before the board for a specific purpose, which is our rules.
Okay, well, I'd like to continue with my, with my questioning of the witnesses tonight. And I don't think that I'm limited to 3 minutes. I think there would be a due process violation if you limited me to 3 minutes when the code specifically gives me the right to do these things. And
I'm going to ask counsel to weigh in on this, Ms. Ruggie.
Thank you, Chair Rogers. Alexander Ruggie, Deputy City Attorney. Counsel, I think the chair is not limiting you to 3 minutes in this instance. I think what I think he's trying to attempt to say is that we need to ensure that your cross-examination or your testimony here provided goes towards the conditions that the land use is going to consider. So if the widening of the road, that's not really a major variance that's being requested at this time. it's a conceptual project, and Ms. Biggs is the city engineer for the city of Evanston.
my
So
point-
she's not involved with the District 65. She didn't present as a witness for the major variation. So if we can just keep that testimony and the cross-examination to the consideration of the land use, I think that would help this move along.
And could I just get also a clarification that for all of the variations requested, the commission is a recommending body tonight?
Yes, that's correct. The land use is a recommending body to the city council.
Okay. All right. I thank you. And I apologize if I was asking things that were out of your purview. What I'd like to ask somebody from planning staff, and if hopefully you all have my letter that was submitted in the packet. If anybody needs it, there's an extra copy. But I like to focus now on the FAR variation, and the FAR in the open space district is 0.15. Is that correct? Okay. And the variation is requested to bring that up to 0.65?
It was 0.62.
0.62. And I may be wrong about this, but was the code recently, within the last few years, amended to allow variations of FAR in open space when previously no open space variations were allowed, or did I misread that?
To my knowledge, there hasn't been changes where, I think it's always been the case where an applicant can request a variance
For including FAR?
Including FAR.
Okay. All right. In that case, if I can ask you, in the last 10 years, how many FAR variances have been allowed for projects in the open space district?
I would have to look that information up to go back 10 years worth of projects.
Do you know of
I
any?
don't know that there,
Do you think
to
of
my
any?
more recent knowledge, I don't know that there have been any, but since you are requesting information that's going back 10 years, I would need to do some
Well,
more
I guess,
research
can
on
you think
that.
of any project where a variation has been, an FAR variation has been allowed in the open space district?
To my recollection, no. However, I am not the only planner that is in the Planning and Zoning Division, so there may be some other projects that are escaping my mind at the moment.
Do any of the other planners know?
To my knowledge, no. I've only been on staff since July, and there have not been any requests to my knowledge since that time.
And can you explain the purpose from a planning perspective of having an FAR of 0.15? And just to be clear, 0.15 is a pretty low FAR. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, that is a fair
Okay.
statement.
And can you explain the planning reason for having such a low FAR in the open space district?
So the intent of the district, which is actually stated within my staff report, is essentially to maintain as much open space as possible.
But it does allow, just to be clear, it does allow the building of the open space district does allow a building of a public school as of right.
Correct.
But if one were to do that, they could only build it at 0.15 FAR, correct?
By right, but
By
they are within their legal bounds to request a variance.
And
from that
so the
requirement.
variance here is basically quadrupling the allowed FAR in an open space district.
Essentially.
Okay. In terms of the, Michael from KOLA, can I ask you a couple of questions? And I'm just trying to understand the drop-off zone, especially on Ashland. First of all, in terms of the width of the streets, I believe Ashland was listed as a 24-foot wide street. And what's that's classified as a neighborhood street, or what's the name given?
Local street.
A local street. And how wide is Simpson?
Simpson is approximately 40 feet.
Okay, so Simpson is 40-foot wide, and there's two lanes of traffic, or one lane going each way. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, but Ashland is an even smaller street, 24-foot wide.
Correct.
All right, and right now, am I correct that there's a no parking sign on one side of
Parking.
Ashland? Is that correct?
Parking's permitted on the east side, prohibited on the west.
So, all right, so it's currently prohibited on the west side. And isn't that a concern? Because if you had a car parked on the east side and a car parked on the west side, there really wouldn't be much space in the middle?
That's why we're putting in the lay-by lane.
You called it a what?
Lay-by lane.
What's lay-by lane?
It's the cutout that's running down along the school frontage.
Okay. So, but it's a drop-off zone, right?
It's a drop-off, pickup, parking zone. Can be used for however you want to use it.
Okay. And in your survey, what was your expectation of the number of mostly parents, I'm assuming, but people who would use that every morning?
We didn't get down to that actual number of people who would use that. We have some numbers that will be traveling down Ashland, but a couple of things that I did not testify is we're proposing to make Ashland one-way southbound during the pickup and drop-off period. That's in the traffic study. I didn't bring it up last time, and I apologize. You find this at many schools, that they provide a one-way circulation during the pickup and drop-off times.
So that's just on this map, that's going right to left, right?
It would be southbound from Simpson down to Foster.
Okay, and so when you get to Foster, then you turn on Foster. That's how you would exit if you dropped off your child.
Exactly.
Okay, and I believe Biggs testified that there is a concern that Ashland isn't wide enough to accommodate everything that you're trying to do with the drop-off zone. Do you agree with that?
I disagree. What staff has requested is that there's a concern that south of the access drive to the parking lot, so just south of the school, they're concerned that parents may stop and drop off on the west side of the school. So what they asked is that another lay-by lane or the widening of the road be done so that if someone does drop off on Ashland south of that drive, they're not blocking traffic. So what they want is, what I understand is requested is that a second lay-by lane be provided so that there's parking along the whole west side of Ashland.
All right. So your understanding is it wouldn't affect the east side, is your understanding of what staff is concerned about?
They're concerned about parking on that side. How we skin that cat has not been determined yet.
And if you haven't done an estimate of the use of the drop-off zone that you've created, how do you know that that it's big enough to accommodate all the parents who are going to use it twice a day, however many parents there are?
As we indicated, the parents are going to park throughout the neighborhood and drop their kids off or either walk them to. We're not going to have a dedicated line of traffic that's coming in. Like they do at most schools, if you want to drop off and pick up your child, you're going to either park and walk them to school, or you're going to find a parking space and your child's going to walk to you.
Okay, but you thought it was necessary, appropriate to have that cutout so it would be a pickup and drop-off zone, right?
It's so you can park there and get out of your car to get your child. So what we're doing is we understand that additional parking needs to be provided around the school, so we're providing some along our frontage.
And I understand it's a good concept. I'm just questioning, how do you know that it's enough, given what else is going to occur? Given that you're going to have 800, 900 students.
Because we did a whole study, 200 pages, it's in the application.
But you just told me you didn't know how many cars would be using the pickup and drop-off zone on a daily basis. I asked you.
Sir, we're looking at about 100 parents picking up and dropping off, okay? They're going to be throughout the neighborhood. They're not all going to be on Ashland, okay? Maybe 30% of them may park on Ashland, maybe 5%. What we did is we looked at the overall neighborhood to see how much parking is in the neighborhood. There's sufficient parking in the neighborhood to accommodate the pickup and drop-off.
Would you agree there's going to be additional traffic activity on Ashland, whether it's the pickup and drop-off or just cars driving down Ashland, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thanks, I appreciate it.
No problem.
Mr. Maroos, how you doing, Mike? Yeah, where's the second mic?
Second mic is there, but you tend to turn and talk to the person, and I want to make sure we're picking
I'm
everything
sorry,
up.
maybe if I do this, I'll do a little bit better. So when you were answering the question of Mr. Melchuk, you were talking about that we shouldn't really consider this an open space because it's owned by the district and the district could use it for something else, right?
That's correct.
But as of right, the district could only build something to 1.5, build something to 0.15 FAR. That's what the district can do as of right, correct?
Without a variance, that's correct. But it is zoned to build a school or another building. That's correct.
Right, but without, but what, and don't you look at what you can do as of right to measure what an alternative use might be?
Absolutely, but we also look at the highest and best use of the trends of development, for modern school buildings or public buildings as part of our consideration and the needs of a community in this situation for a neighborhood school. So having a multi-story modern school building is not unusual.
I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to read your study. I'm sure it's very thorough. Mike and I have worked on projects in the past, as you might have figured out. So if I want to figure out, okay, what new school has been built in Evanston that's comparable to this school in terms of height and FAR, and see what the impact has had on neighboring properties, which school would you suggest that I focus on? Which newly built school should I focus on in Evanston?
Evanston is a mature community. There haven't been any new schools comparable to this, but I looked at Orrington and Dewey, which are elementary schools, and also Evanston High School, which, provide the same function, but because of the land use, there aren't sites for new schools.
When was Dewey constructed?
I'd have to look. It's probably 40 to 60 years old.
And Orrington?
Oh, that's even older than me. It's
So
probably 70-plus years old.
If my client thinks there's going to be a negative impact on her property values because of this school, give me an example that I should take a look at somewhere outside of Evanston of a newly built school and the property values on the residential neighborhood 24 feet across the street. What school should I look at?
I'm highly fond of Evanston and think it's one of the best suburban communities for many reasons. And, you look at the mature communities of River Forest, Oak Park, Western Springs. No, I understand what you're saying, but these mature communities, just talk about 24 feet. I mean, the Emerson School in Park Ridge is a middle school that was built about 15 years ago, and no negative impact, absolutely a positive impact on residential property values, and that just comes to my mind.
Okay.
But I mean, it's such an unusual situation. I think the existing community and the existing type school buildings are much more comparable, in my professional opinion.
Okay, I'll take a look at the Emerson School in Park Ridge and see if it's comparable and what the impact on property values were. So thanks, I appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that's all I have in terms of questions. If I could then present Ms. Benai as a witness.
Yes.
Julie, come on up. And why don't you take the microphone? And if I could just hand out one additional exhibit.
Present them to me, and then I will take them. So I'm receiving a series of a couple of photos. labeled field is always busy with people of neighborhood, and so does tennis courts. People wait 5 become available. Were these 2 pictures, were they taken, who took these pictures?
I took it from my porch in
Okay.
front.
And when did you take these pictures?
I took it sometimes ago, but it is always like that.
Okay, so you don't.
It's always.
All right, so you don't have an exact date or anything when these were taken?
Not the exact date, but it was like a few weeks ago,
Okay.
I have to say. But it is always like that. The point I was making is that
Looks like the trees are blooming, so I think it was fairly close. So, Ms. Benai, let's do this as a kind of question and answer. I know you have a lot to say, but I want to kind of break it up a little bit. Okay. So, first of all, can you tell us where you live? What's your address?
2025 Ashland.
Okay. And if we take a look at the site development plan that's up there, can you try to identify your house?
Okay. On a corner, it's a church on Ashland, and then it is the 3rd building to the left of it. Not the first one, not the second one, the 3rd one.
And what kind of house is it?
It's a rental 3-unit, and I live on a 1st floor.
So you rent out 2 units?
Yes,
Okay. And how long have you lived at the property?
20 years.
So you purchased it in
2004,
And,
almost 20 years, yeah.
And when you purchased it in 2004, was the Foster Field like it is today?
Almost, yeah.
Okay. And let's, if I can refer to the photos that you took, the top photo, you said that was taken from your porch?
Yes,
So that's looking across Ashland to Foster Field?
correct.
Okay. And this may be obvious, but can you describe your view of Foster Field?
And the bottom one is just, again, from my porch looking at the tennis courts. And I meant by providing this that this open space, this field, serve the community really good. And they come and play and they enjoy, and I have talked with them, and the tennis court is always busy, people line up. So,
And how does it affect your quality of life to see open space from
very
from your
good.
porch?
It is the nice view. It's grass, especially when the city cut it. It's such a nice breeze coming. And that is one, I just want to say at this point, it's the biggest thing that I am able to rent. And so one of my tenants who doesn't have a car and go around and walk, when he saw the sign, he just told me, other people haven't seen it, I'm going to move out. He just told me like that, what is this? I came here because of open space, because of view, because of quiet. And I myself moved from the Chicago for the same reason. Absolutely, I bought this property for this field. And I was kind of sure that, read the regulation, that nothing like this will happen.
Yeah, because you saw it was zoned as open space.
Yes, and I read the limitation, and I say if they build something, it's not going to be Godzilla.
And by the way, your training is in what profession?
I am architect. I have practiced it for 40 years. I recently got, retired, and looking forward to some peace and quiet. And the 40 years I practiced, I am 66 now, is minus my education. I have a master's degree in architecture, 2 of them from University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. And I'm very familiar with all these things. I have been to many zoning appeal and meeting in the city of Chicago mostly, and the suburb too. And this is very unfair to the residents on Ashland.
Alex, could you put up the slide that shows the rendering with the Ashland Avenue view? I'm sorry, yeah.
That's okay.
Can I also add something, lawyer?
I'm going to have some questions where I think you'll be
Yeah.
able to add whatever
Yes.
else you like. Okay. And so you understand that that is what it's going to look like now from your porch to across Ashland?
Yes.
And you know, there were some comments about what we're here for tonight, and I think what we're here for tonight is determine whether or not the proposed variations meet the standards. And there hasn't been a lot of discussion about the standards that are part of the code. So I'd like to ask you about a couple of the standards and whether you believe that the project as proposed meets the standards. Standard 1 under the code for variations or major variations is that the requested variation will not have a substantial adverse impact on the use, enjoyment, or property values of adjoining properties.
On the use it has, on the use it has, because my second and third floor rent-on become useless. They told me, and still the other tenant haven't heard it. My mortgage is high, but I am afforded it based on the tenancy, based on rent, which especially with the retirement is my only income. I lose this building because I won't be able to pay it after 20 years, which is my sweat and blood. And now this, and I am sure I may put up with all the hardship on a first floor because my life has been very hard. But my tenant doesn't have to put up with this. And enjoyment, of course. And I know that what the appraiser said, but I have been appealing for the tax reduction. I have an appraiser who is very familiar with my building, and he told me what a stupid question. It is common sense. You have to know that the value of your property, your building old and all these things, the value come as a result of a view. Now you lose that view. Why do you think it is? And he brought me an example too, that people like to be close to the train station, walking distance, but they don't want to be by the train station. So understand that it brings the value of your property down, especially with the rental property. And another thing I want to say is that all the unfairness happened toward the Ashland. The parking, the loading dock, the garbage enclosure, the wall. Simpson is wider and there are a setback. But on an Ashland, it is so close to property line. My building from the floor to the ridge is 35 feet. I am not going to have any light at all. Chicagoland is always stormy. You know, there is no light. And now on top of that, the Godzilla for the rest of my life in front of my building. Why all the unfairness is happening on an Ashland site?
Let me ask you, there was a talk earlier about how much community engagement there was. Did anybody from District 65 ever come and knock on your door and introduce themselves and ask you what your thoughts or opinions were?
No. And another thing I like to add, the first time I heard about this project, I say, what? Just so close to the bar, double clutch. You people serve us within the 500 feet for what? Because you know our life is affected in a people of a 500 feet around. I measured from the property of the school to the property of the bar. It is 250 feet. And I want to say about the personal experience. I passed by the bar and there are a bunch of drunk people sitting in. And obviously, being architect, I look at inside and they took their tongue out. How do you allow that 34 years? And I felt filthy for a week. How do you allow a 13 years old girl, 14 years old girl, emotional, more emotional even than me? How can she put up with such a scene? The double clutch is just across from the soul food. And that is going to be a big gathering for the student, and also the corner of Simpson and Ashland. And from first floor, not only they see it, but better from the upper floor. I provided the picture at 8 o'clock, 7:30 to 8:30. It wasn't in an evening with all this neon on, Budweiser, Spirited, and everything. So the location is wrong.
I want to move on from the bar issue and ask you another question. This focuses on Standard 7, which requires that the requested variation requires the least deviation from the applicable regulations among the feasible options identified before the Land Use Commission issues its decision or recommendation to the City Council regarding said variation. As an architect, do you think there was a way to build this school that had less impact upon you and your neighbors on Ashland Avenue?
I want to say something very important here. All the tenants who come, and I show them the place, the first thing they ask is that a school referring to Phillywood Jordan? I say no. Some of them insist, how come not? That means, my own opinion and everybody, the Phillywood Jordan during the past 20 years, I heard so much about that it is a bad building. Some people say renovate it, some people say demolish it and build it. So that is the best place for a school, and everything stay the same way, for the enjoyment of a community.
I guess my question is if this particular school, can you think of a way that if they were going to build this school or this type of school, how it could be built with less impact? For example, if there was a larger setback if the school was set back further on Ashland, say
Exactly.
50 feet,
I know. I know.
minimize the impact?
The first suggestion is that the community center to be renovated or demolished and increased, that become a school, everything stay the same way, and you don't need to pay another $1 million to the state because of the removal of the tennis court. And then everybody enjoy open space, things will be fair to everybody. But if that cannot be done, again, as an architect, I suggest, why L-shape? Be fair to everybody. Make it T-shape. T, and the top of the T to be by the Simpson, and the rest of the T to be not in the middle. It can be closer to the Ashland, but the field divide to two sections. A smaller one for the smaller children toward the Ashland, and the bigger one for the bigger, like a K to 2/4 for the smaller, this side of Ashland, and the bigger one. That way, everybody will have a light, and the parking is still the same way. They still have an access to the bottom of the T. I am sorry.
All right, well,
And then, that by itself solve the light problem, and I don't know how a square footage will be done, but at least we get light. And then about the parking, what I heard is that the parkway toward the, on the west side will be eliminated, and it convert to the, just the dropout and then parking rest of the time. Because it's a 20 years I am driving, and I have a very hard time passing. Our side is a parking, but I have very hard time passing. Two cars pass by each other. I always go, after a couple of times I was brushing against other car. I go to the parking lane on my side, let the opposite side pass by. So the street has to be widened, and please don't take two parkway away. You are studying this traffic. Don't take, because the tree and parkway beautify, otherwise it look like a State Street in Chicago if you take both of them. And it look at trees and parkway make cities beautiful. They clean the air. They restrict the noise. One side to be, and one of the best thing is that, and I don't know why nobody care about that, the whole thing, the school setback, the property line setback, and the street be widened. And we keep our parkway, and the other side, they can eliminate the parkway. And then 7 feet is a standard, speaking architecturally, for the parking, the drop-off, whatever. and then the rest to be added to the street, that we don't have an accident.
Julie, anything else that you want to tell the commission about why you believe these variations should not be approved?
Because I consider this an open space. I bought this property the way it was. And it is very unfair toward the Ashland. I ask that the commission ask architect to, first of all, study. You know, somebody told me, oh, they have done so much work. No, this is a schematic design. It is exactly for looking to all these things. So if some architectural company go beyond that and do detail and stuff like that, okay, that is what they want to do. But the procedure, and I have done it for the 200 project I have done, we go with a piece of a paper to the zoning officer, although we study and we know all the rule, but to double check. And then, you know, we ask for everything, for FAR, for the land coverage, which is different than FAR, the height restriction, parking, driveway, landscaping, things like that, and we take it from there. So this is a larger project, but it is at the schematic design stage. So, you know what, everybody go through it, the same stuff, more for the bigger project. And if anybody say plat of survey is provided, so plat of survey is something which has to be there already. And if it is provided, it is not any loss, you know, even if they don't do anything.
Okay, but I don't want you to talk about the procedure as much as...
No, but what I'm saying, I just want to, bottom line is that this work is a schematic design. Nobody have to look at it as, oh my God, so much work is done. Everybody should have be ready for this. This is an open space, and it is not fair to be like this. It's not fair. Things is very unfair toward the Ashland. My building is 35 feet from the floor to the ridge, and it goes completely to the shadow.
And let me ask you one more question. If District 65 was to guarantee that you would not have any property value loss, meaning there would be an appraisal, and then...
That is not the only thing.
Let me finish. If they were to guarantee that we do an appraisal now, and we build a school, and then we see what your property values are.
That's the smallest problem. I don't want to sell my property, so it is go down. That is painful, but I am going to live there until I die. My problem is that the height of the, the building.
Okay.
That is my main, and then traffic on an Ashland has to be done, because right now I am suffering and it's going to be more. And view, and you know.
Thank you. I know you're very passionate about this, and I thank the commission for allowing us to go a little longer.
Extension.
I do have a question. Ms. Benai, you seem to be an architect. You seem to be educated. Mr. Kinsley, you seem to be educated in land use issues. We've heard talks about views. Does zoning guarantee a view?
No, but it's something that may be taken into account. The loss. Remember, these are variations. We're not talking about.
I know they are. I know they are.
This is not being built as of right. So you can take, when considering a variation, you can certainly take view into account, because that falls squarely within standard 1. So they could build, if they want to build as of right, we would have no say. But you can consider.
I'm aware of what we're able to do.
Mr. Rogers, I want to say something. I also looked at the building at next to the 1608 Simpson. And that is where all the buses park. And there is a little shop to repair. One of my clients, a couple of months ago, regardless of this school, told me what a valuable piece of a property to be used like that. It is owned by District 65. And there are lots of property west of Evanston or even in Skokie which are much less valuable. So by selling this or by giving it to the city of Evanston and find another property, sell it to city of Evanston. District 65 with the money difference can buy the Phillywood Jordan and have the school there. And then city of Evanston save $1 million for the tennis court. And we all are happy.
Thank you, Ms. Benai.
Any other questions?
I have a long
Second time.
All right, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Kinsley. At this point, I'm going to ask, I think I've gotten everybody from the public who wished to speak. At this point, I'm going to ask the applicant if they would like to come forward, make any rebuttal to anything they've heard from the neighborhood, anything they'd like to say in a closing statement. Mr. Summers, I see you raising your hand, but I'd like to move along unless it's something very important.
The one thing I would like to say on behalf of District 65, we appreciate the opportunity to present before the commission, and we've also appreciated the collaboration that we've enjoyed with the City of Evanston staff, and the goal, as we've stated before, of this school is to provide a neighborhood school to one ward in Evanston that currently doesn't have neighborhood school. And we believe it's a right of every child growing up to be able to walk back and forth from school, not to be bused, and not to drive around the city for an hour each way just to get to school. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
I just want to be on the record to thank you for your time and also to city staff to get us to this point.
Thank you. Before I ask Commissioners' feelings, is everybody okay? I saw a couple people get up and use the restroom and stretch their legs and everything. Is everybody okay? Okay. Then I will ask Commissioners' general feelings on the proposal, and also point to, we have quite a list of department recommendations. There are 19 listed in the staff memo that was presented to us on page 10 and 11 of the document. Commissioner Halleck, you've turned on your light.
Is this to give our comments?
Yes.
Yeah. Starting off, this commission deals with change all the time. That's what we deal with, and I think what we do, and this addresses the first standard. What we try to do is look at the issue and look at the whole community that it's in, and what are the positive effects and what are the negative effects. And I think that and hopefully rule on the majority. If the majority is positive, then that's how we give our opinion. At least that's what I do. In this case, I think there may be residents that have issues with this project, but I think the overarching issue is providing a neighborhood school, and that point's been made clear by several people. I should also say that no, I'm speaking, please. I should also say that I grew up right across the street from a 5-story full block K through 12 school. There were no problems. There were no issues of value of the community. So that's again where I come from. My child went to a school, and an urban school, and there was no drop off. There was no parking lot. We parked our cars, walked to the school, picked up our kids, walked back to our cars. I know how that works, and so a lot of the testimony rang true for me. I do think that this is schematic design. I understand that, and one of our other commissioners mentioned the possibility of flipping the L so that the open space is on Ashland. Maybe that's an option. I see a negative to that, which is that instead of isolating the playground where all the kids are going to be out and not so visible to passersby, it exposes the kids. And so from a safety standpoint, I'm not sure that's a good idea, although it would help the resident who just spoke. I think there are things that we should add to the recommendations. I think the testimony on artificial turf was new to me. I think that based on that, sod sounds like a much better idea. Whiting Ashland, although the plans aren't final, that seems like that should be taken into consideration too. And just the issue of parking. There was a lot of discussion about parking, and I think maybe that deserves another look before this goes to City Council. Oh, and one more thing. I thought it was a good idea to tie the Dewey access road to the family-focused parking.
So this is deliberation among the chair. The public has had their comment. This is us discussing. Commissioner Westerberg.
I'll echo some of Commissioner Halleck's issues. I will say, although this is open space zoning, you know, the owner does have a right to ask for variances. The city doesn't necessarily need to grant them, but they have that right. And it is unfortunate for neighbors who feel they will lose their view completely. But a view, as I have found out in my own living situation, is not necessarily guaranteed. The changes that have to happen here are substantial in order for the school to be built. I wish that it weren't the two schools going together. I do feel that drives the size and the FAR a bit, but you'd probably need some variation in any event to make this happen. I do feel if you could get a setback at the third floor that overlooks Simpson, that would really help that elevation and relieve it a little bit from a visual standpoint. I would also encourage looking at getting a bit more of a setback on Ashland, just so that you're not up quite to the property line. I do think that would be an important gesture to the community. I'm sure the school is needed. I think this is a great project, but it's also the rest of the community that has to deal with this. And I think, you know, making some concessions and some adjustments are important at this stage to make it work. The biggest issue I have is the usual thing. It's making sure the details of stormwater management are worked out and the details on traffic control. And I realize you're at a stage where you might not necessarily have all those details. But there is going to be bad traffic at times, and it will drive the neighbors crazy, and it will have an impact on businesses and residences. I don't know that there's any way around that to make it perfect, but I think looking a little bit more at how you are going to coordinate the pickups and the drop-offs is really important. And I do worry about approving something when we don't have those details, so we don't exactly know how it's going to work at this stage. So those are my concerns right now. I'm not necessarily opposed to voting on this tonight, but I think a lot of work still needs to be done before the council approves of it, and I guess I'd like to see some recognition of that in the conditions.
I'm in favor of the project. We see a lot of cases before this commission of people trying to, you know, promote projects for a certain goal and trying to push the bounds of the zoning rules to the largest extent possible for their own interests. This is a case where we have a goal of the school that's being fit into the bounds of the zoning to the best extent possible. There is no more logical location for the school. There isn't a better configuration. I think the layout is actually quite good. I think that the L shape, by protecting the green space for the students, is actually really smart. It creates kind of like a more communal, like home space that's just for the kids and just for that school. I think that's a lot better than exposing it to the outside. And then just a final comment, and I even feel silly even commenting on the toxicity of the turf, because I'm not even convinced that that's actually even in our scope. But I think it's common for people to get concerned when they hear the words toxins and things, but if you follow the science on that, lots of things are toxic in our environment, and if you follow advice from institutes of public health, the different state departments, they will all tell you that that the turf, the toxins in turf are really not that of a concern, but not even our scope, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'll look to this side.
I'm also in favor of the project. I think I am an actual resident of the 5th Ward to begin with. I don't have any kids, but this school is very needed. So with that said, a lot of the times you have to give up some of your, I guess, comfort level in order to help the community, because we are still a community. So with that said, I am in favor of this project.
Commissioner Renshaw.
So I'll probably repeat some of the words from my colleagues. Yes, for the school, it's needed, and this property is one of the locations that are good for the school. I think that the program for the school is too large, and this made the architect struggle with the location of the building, the height of the building, and thus the FAR, which is out of the code requirements, and the height too. I'm trying to balance this with the neighborhood, with the streets on the sides, and I think that there are too many unknowns. The things that I personally, let's call it, don't like is the corridors that are created along the two streets, mainly on Simpson. It's a large building, it's a long building, and it is on the south side of all the businesses that are on the other side of the street. This creates a really difficult situation for me and my vote on this project. The other things that are still unknown, as many of the neighbors noted, there are many unknowns about the future traffic, about the parking, and they are not decided at this moment of design. I know it's schematic design. We cannot expect that everything will be resolved with the schematic design, but at least the principal things of design should be clear with this presentation. And I'm not sure that I can support unknown, not very well thought project to go forward for the City Council. I would like this project to be thought once again, if could be reduced a little on the program, if it could be reduced in size, if it could be moved a little bit from the street or reorganized. I know that the main problem is the area that has to be available for the kids. But all these things are a matter of solution, site planning, urban planning, and I think that it needs more work. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson.
I appreciate all the commentary and all the public input. In looking at our standards for approval, I don't find this plan to meet all the standards. And I know, Mr. Chair, you're going to go through this in a couple of minutes, but it seems in my interpretation that Standard 4 and Standard 7 about the practical difficulty and the least deviation aren't met because of variants 1 and 2 that are being requested for. If the school was smaller, if the height was lower, then we wouldn't. Then, in my opinion, it would pass the standards, but I just feel like it's excessive FAR, excessive height, and this could be reworked to meet all the standards that we require for approval.
Thank you. Just my general thoughts before we do go through the standards. First off, we're not here to sit in judgment of whether or not there should be a school in the Fifth Ward, and I want to make that perfectly clear. We're evaluating this particular plan that is presented to us and not making a judgment call on whether a school should exist or not. It's this particular proposal. Where I feel a little uncomfortable with this is that we are still very theoretical with a lot of our material that's been presented to us. We don't have solid answers on some things. And I don't expect us to be able to have solid answers on everything. Obviously, whenever you build something, you impact traffic, you impact the neighborhood. And that's to be expected. When we talk about standard number one, substantial adverse impact, I mean, substantial is in there for a reason, because everything does have an impact. But in looking through so many of the conditions that staff is recommending to us at this particular point, these are lots of things that we like to sort of have already in line and in place before something comes to us, because we're putting a lot of conditions in that once it leaves here, we have no say over any longer. And so it really becomes, we sort of kick it to planning and development and city council and hope that they've heard what's been discussed in this particular room, and that they actually look at the conditions that we've placed and put them on there, because I think some of the conditions are very substantial. I mean, I've parked in this neighborhood for many years, not regularly, but I used to go up on a fairly regular occasion because one of my dog's doctors was on Simpson. And I do know how difficult it could be to find parking sometimes along Simpson 10:30, 11 o'clock in the day, which is outside of school drop-off times, I'm aware. So that's where I'm kind of struggling most with this, is really that there are things that we're saying, oh, we'll look at this in 3 months or in 6 months, but we're being asked to make a decision on it today. And that's where I feel a little uncomfortable. And I know Commissioner Halleck is going to say something to me.
Because I always have a comment after you make a comment. I guess my question is, to me, and it seems like we've done this before, if generally we're in favor of the project, we can recommend it with conditions. If we don't recommend the project, that's a totally different thing. That's saying nix.
Right.
So I think your comment is correct, especially regarding traffic and what to do about Ashland and parking and those sorts of things. I think, to me, that is especially vague. But I think that the process that Evanston has, which is that, there's DAPR, there's four stages. There's DAPR, there's us, there's planning and development, and then final city council. So I think that each group, by recommending conditions, should tell the applicant that they should look at those conditions before the next step. So that's just the way I feel about our, approval or not approval.
And I agree. I agree with that. Like I said, though, for something, lots of times we do move things along. This is a major project in comparison to some of the other things that we have seen that are a little more on the schematic side. I mean, a building downtown has an impact, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't impact an immediate neighborhood in the same way that something like this will. I mean, the streets downtown are designed for more traffic, that sort of stuff. So that's where I feel a little uncomfortable. I'm not going to argue it with you that I'm, one way or the other. I'm just saying that I like to see some of this stuff a little more nailed down. And so I think that as we move through the recommendation, some of this is, before it goes to P&D, I would like to see some of these answered if possible. I'm looking at staff, who's staring blankly back at me, so that we know that some of these concerns are going to be addressed and heard. And I realize staff has only so much that they can do when it comes to our elected officials as well. So with that, anybody have anything else they'd like to say before I begin going through the standard? Actually, before I go through the standard, can we take just a moment and look through the department recommendation of conditions, because that will guide some of the standards, excuse me. As I mentioned, there are 19 conditions that have been recommended. I've heard discussion as to a couple other things that we may want to look at. Number one, provide a final landscape plan prior to City Council. Provide a tree removal replacement plan prior to City Council. Provide a waste removal plan prior to City Council. A construction management plan is required for construction. That's typical on most of the projects that we do that are of a larger scale. Number 5, a pedestrian and traffic circulation plan shall be provided within 6 months of approval of the project. This plan will be evaluated, amended, and submitted to the city as necessary. I would actually like to see that done more quickly than in 6 months. I would like to see something done in 3 months, if everyone agrees with that.
I'd also suggest, I don't know if it can be done, but I think more details would be helpful before it goes to City Council. Again, I don't know with the timing if that is doable, but I think it would help enormously in terms of just addressing questions and concerns.
That also goes into to address the impacts of the neighborhood plan, should include the following recommendations included within the traffic study provided by KLOA, confirmation and city approval of any proposed street closures for drop-off pickup times. That includes, I'm assuming, the one-way south that we heard mentioned. Confirmation and city approval of any temporary one-way street designations. I'm sorry, that's the second one there. Use of crossing guards and other staff to direct traffic in the area. Number 6, a robust educational active transportation safety initiative for students shall be developed. This is basically designed to make sure that we are keeping children safe, that they understand. We used to go to, I don't know if they still do it anymore, like a safety school sort of thing where you sometimes were the driver, sometimes you were the pedestrian. And as a small child, you tried to hit the pedestrian, not realizing that that's not what you were supposed to be doing. Number 7, additional parking alternatives should be pursued to support the city's CARP goals, considering increasing incentives to further promote staffers commuting via CTA. District 65 should regulate the parking lot via a permit program so that there's some way to correlate that to a transit program. Work with the city to utilize additional parking spaces within the Ecology Center or Civic Center parking lots, which are a little further out than the immediate neighborhood. Parallel parking spaces on Ashland should be very short-term parking, allowing residents and visitors to use the spaces. A 1-hour max limit would be suggested. Spaces can disallow parking during certain times. No parking 7 to 9 a.m., 2 to 4, Monday through Friday. Surrounding community implement residential parking districts is considered. But if it is done, there's a recommendation that school staff will not be granted residential parking district permits. The applicant may be required to contact at their own expense or to contract with their own expense with a traffic consultant to study pedestrian and traffic circulation over time. So this is basically an extended traffic study and then adjusting along the way, which is kind of a repeat of number 5, but a more open-ended one. Shared use agreement for required parking for Fleetwood Jourdain in the play field. Signage must be required to designate which one is R for Fleetwood Jourdain. Number 11, an easement agreement must be negotiated and approved by the City Council for access to Fleetwood Jourdain Maintenance Drive on the west side of the parking lot. Number 12, a pedestrian path must be established through the parking lot. 13, a pickup drop-off area on the southern part of Ashland is added to mirror the parent pickup drop-off on the north. Dimension the existing right-of-way and widen Ashland to 36-foot back to curb of back to curb. And that's something we heard a little bit of testimony about, but it sounds like it's very much out there without really any study being done to it or any plan as to how to execute it. a rodent control plan designed by a certified operator, especially provided during and before, during, and after construction. Snow removal plan required to be submitted within 6 months of project approval. Snow being stored on-site or hauled away. Mechanical equipment is screened and designed to minimize noise impacts in the surrounding neighborhood. Street light replacement required for all existing lights affected by the pickup drop-off areas and construction. Public refuge containers are installed per Public Works standards. Those are the 19 that were in the packet. There has been some talk of a tie-in from Dewey to Family Focus parking, which I'm just going to look at Ms. Biggs and say, is there any huge problem with that? Just shake your head for me, yes or no. That's a no shake. There also has been a lot of talk about artificial turf versus natural turf. Commissioner Fotel feels that that's a little bit outside of what we're able to address here. I don't know other commissioners' feelings on that, if that's something you want to put in, if you feel that that is within our purview.
I would say this, I worked with a private school that was being built in the Illinois Medical District. They did look at turf, artificial turf versus grass. They decided on grass mostly because of the injury issue with artificial turf. Whether that's in our purview or not quite sure. From an environmental standpoint, I can't make any comment on that. I would suggest that perhaps we're able to add a condition for having permeable pavers in the parking area. That would help somewhat.
It seems to me that we can make a recommendation on this, not from a technical standpoint, but from a environmental standpoint, from a Evanston environmental standards standpoint, drainage. I don't know. I think we can.
Council have anything you'd like to add? You don't have to. I'm looking at you as this is being discussed. No, nothing. Okay. With that, as I mentioned, there are 7 standards that we must feel are met. If we do not agree with one of the standards, we cannot vote in support of the project. However, if we feel that some of the conditions that are included help meet the standard, we can vote in favor of that. Number 1, the requested variation will not have a substantial adverse impact on the use, enjoyment, or property values of adjoining properties. This is probably the one standard that we've had the most testimony about. As I mentioned before, there will always be an impact on any neighborhood property whenever there is development occurring nearby. I believe that if we put on the roughly 22 conditions that are being sought, that we lessen that impact and hope that City Council and Planning and Development will heed those, and perhaps even have the applicant have answers to some of those questions before it appears before City Council, so that they can be addressed there as well. If you don't agree with one of my findings, please feel free to say so at that time. The requested variation is in keeping with the intent of the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance does intend for us to have schools, obviously. The fact that we in Evanston have had long discussions upon the subject of neighborhood schools, with the 5th Ward being one particular neighborhood that has lost its school over the years, and the fact that we do see that the open space area, which this is currently zoned, is permitted to be built upon in very, very few conditions, under very, very few conditions, one of which is being an educational building. So I believe that this standard is met. The alleged hardship or practical difficulty is peculiar to the property. I think this goes a little bit to the fact that we are talking about an open space district. And obviously, whereas there are things that are buildable by right, There also is a very, very low build by right. My belief for that is so that everything that is built in an open space has to come to the city in some way for approval, as opposed to having a larger build by right, which then can be used by people for whatever they wish to build. So I believe this is a practical difficulty and hardship that is created, but I believe the city created it for a purpose. Number 4, the property owner would suffer a particular hardship or practical difficulty as distinguished from a mere inconvenience if the strict letter of the regulations were to be carried out. Again, and kind of looking at the different areas that we are looking at with floor area ratio, the proposed height, the parking, we talked a little bit about there being kind of 2 front yards. When you have a building that is a through lot, runs block to block, obviously it can create some different issues. But I believe that the strict letter of the regulations could not be carried out and allow anything to be built here that would reasonably represent a school. Commissioner Halleck, you look like you were going to, okay. Number 5, the purpose of the variation is not based exclusively upon a desire to extract additional income from the property. There's also a second section which talks about the public benefit. The schools are free. They aren't going to make additional income off of this building. And the fact is, under 5B, they also do provide, obviously, a very specific public benefit in educating the next generation, and therefore, I believe that standard is met. Number 6, the alleged difficulty or hardship has not been created by any person having an interest in the property. This is a lot that has been in District 65 ownership for a number of years. They have exercised the ability to keep it as an open lot. They have sold off some portions of it to Family Focus and to the city of Evanston for different uses. But they've been holding on to this for quite a while, and I don't believe that anything has been created by them having this property already in ownership. And number 7, the requested variation requires the least deviation from the applicable regulation among the feasible options identified before the Land Use Commission. This is one that's always a little tricky because obviously your minimum and my minimum may be very different. One of the things that concerned me coming in was the height of the building, with it being only 3 stories and being 45 feet tall. I asked a question about that. I was told that it's I don't remember if I was told it was a best practice or if it was a regulation or something to have a 10-foot window to allow light to enter in further into the classroom. That satisfies my concern on that one. And looking at the other things, I think that, when we look at the minimum, we've already seen them reduce the height, reduce the FAR by removing a floor. So I think that's shown that there's an interest, or they've made an attempt at getting it down to a more workable situation. And then, and specifically looking at the front yard open parking, I mean, we've talked a little bit about whether parking could be put underground. We have a high water table that creates an issue for us. And so I believe that this standard is also.
I'd like to add another thing, because that's why I asked the question about the program and whether this was, the schools are formulaic. They cannot be big fat buildings. They have to be linear buildings. You have to get light and vent into all these classrooms, which sets up the whole single loaded or double loaded corridor idea. So the shape of the building is a given that it's a school. And secondly, I asked about the program for this very reason, and that what they testified is that this is the minimal size building to satisfy the program with some cushion for expansion, which you always want to have. So to me, they've satisfied that.
I think I would say that it doesn't really quite meet this standard for the least deviation, at least not yet. And again, as Commissioner Miranchev identified, I think there are some things that the applicant could look at to really reduce the size and the bulk, to see if the program can be tweaked a little bit to allow more setback from Ashland, a little bit more of a physical setback at the third floor along Simpson. I think those things make a difference in looking at this particular standard.
I would just add that I think, not to belabor with another condition, but I would like another condition that the applicant consider all of the testimony that's been received tonight and listen to what we have said, what the neighbors have said, with the hope that there will be, you will be able to make some revision before this appears before the Planning and Development Committee and before City Council, hopefully appeasing some of these concerns that I think are legitimate concerns that have been raised, but I think can be addressed through some of these conditions that we've placed. Anybody else have anything they'd like to say before I ask for a motion? Hearing none, do I have a motion in regard to 2000 Simpson 23 ZMJV 0020?
I will give it a try. I move that the Land Use Commission
Recommend approval.
recommend approval for the major variations associated with the project at 2000 Simpson Street, 23Z MJV-0022, subject to the conditions identified by staff in the memo that accompanied the package. These were the 19 conditions. In addition, I would add a condition for use of permeable pavers in the parking lot and the use of grass, not artificial turf, in the open area.
And a tie-in for Dewey to the family-focused parking.
And a tie-in from Dewey to the family-focused parking lot.
And on condition number 5, that we go for 3 months instead of 6.
And on condition 5, go for 3 months instead of 6.
Thank you.
And your recommendation for the looking into all the testimony that was taken into effect.
Can we add that condition as exploring ways to reduce the program and the physical building in light of the testimony heard tonight?
Yes. So that is a motion. Is there a second? So it's been moved by Commissioner Westerberg, seconded by Commissioner Halleck. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Aravallo?
Yes.
Commissioner Halleck? Commissioner Johnson?
No.
Commissioner Miranchev?
No.
Commissioner Pucktell?
Yes.
Commissioner Westerberg?
Yes.
Chair Rogers?
Yes. So with 5 votes in favor, did I do that right? 5 votes in favor and 2 against, the motion carries, and it will be recommended to City Council with a positive recommendation. And hopefully you've heard what the neighbors have said, what this commission has said, and we'll work to hopefully tighten things up a little bit before it gets to planning and development and to City Council. Anything else on that? No. All right, that concludes the one item we had on business this evening. Next is communication. Is there anything staff would like to communicate to us?
Not this evening, thank you.
Thank you. We do have a section for public comment. This is for a section for anybody who wishes to speak to us on any matter. It doesn't have to be on something on tonight's agenda, but just general thoughts on land use. Mr. Hernandez.
Yes, I just wanted to again thank the committee members for the votes. And again, as you mentioned, we are going to follow up with the recommendations as well as what we heard today. Again, we are not done engaging community. That's at the core of doing this particular project, so we will continue to have community engagement sessions in the community to make sure that we continue to listen to community members as we to help us shape this project in a way that meets the needs of all our folks in Fifth Ward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I see somebody else who raised their hand.
As a member of the business community in the Fifth Ward is very much in favor of this school. We are very much challenged, though, by the parking. I do not feel that they have taken that seriously, and I would urge very much that they engage with the business community. No engagement has been done formally with the business community up to this point. And so I challenge that you engage as much with the business community as you have with the parents, because that has not happened. And the business community is a vital part of this area. We have children, we have employees who have children, and having that outreach would do a great deal to make the business community feel that we are being heard and not being sidelined. So I challenge that happens, but we are really, really excited about having a school in the 5th District because we need it. We definitely need it, the children of our family, but please engage with us.
Thank you. I also would encourage everyone to engage with your council members, share with them any concerns, any thoughts that you have. They are the final determining body in this matter. And they can consider things that this board is not eligible to consider. We have sort of a limited scope of what we are allowed to address. Council looks at things much more holistically for the entire city. So I would encourage you to reach out to your council member, which if you live in the 5th Wards is Bobby Burns, which most of you probably already know. If you come from another ward, you'll have to look them up because I'm not going to quote everybody's council member for them. With that, I will ask if there is a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Moved by Commissioner Westerberg. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Aravalo. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? With that, we do stand adjourned. We will be meeting next week on what is the next week? The 26th, here in council chambers. Thank you.